Beyond Asgard's familiar halls, a different divine power stirs. This is the era of the Vanir, the earth-shaping war that forged alliances and our grand tour through all 9 worlds and their myriad inhabitants. The ultimate Norse mythology deep dive continues now. Before we plunge into these incredible new sagas, for the complete story leading up to this point, including the creation of the cosmos and our exhaustive exploration of the Aesir gods in videos 1, 2, and 3, be sure to check out the playlist. Linked in the description below. Welcome to the Purple Files. If you enjoy our videos, please consider subscribing to the channel. Let's get right into it. Our journey now takes a pivotal turn as we delve into the realm of the Vanir, the second great tribe of Norse deities. While the Aesir, whom we've explored extensively, are often associated with war, sovereignty, and the sky, the Vanir are typically connected with fertility, prosperity, the earth, the sea, and certain forms of wisdom and magic, including the potent art of seiðr. Though distinct, their destinies became inextricably linked through one of the most significant conflicts in divine history, the Aesir-Vanir War. This was not a minor skirmish, it was a protracted and defining struggle that reshaped the very structure of the divine world. The Aesir-Vanir War stands as a foundational event in Norse mythology, not just for its dramatic narrative, but because its resolution fundamentally shaped the pantheon as we know it, leading to the unification of these 2 divine families. The precise causes of this war are somewhat veiled in the mists of mythological time, with different sources offering hints and scholars proposing various interpretations, making it a subject of much discussion and scholarly debate. It wasn't a simple disagreement. The roots of the conflict ran deep, touching upon fundamental differences in the natures and practices of the 2 divine tribes. One prominent theory, drawn from Snorri Sturluson's account in the Ynglinga saga, a part of his larger work the Heimskringla, and supported by evocative hints in pivotal poems like the Völuspá, the prophecy of the Seeress, suggests the conflict was ignited by the arrival in Asgard of a mysterious and powerful woman named Gullveig. Her name itself is highly suggestive, often translated as gold might, gold power, or perhaps gold drunk, hinting at an intense connection to wealth and perhaps the corrupting influence of avarice. Gullveig was deeply skilled in seiðr, a powerful and somewhat enigmatic form of magic, particularly associated with the Vanir. This magic involved divination, the ability to perceive and shape fate, and perhaps the power to influence minds and desires. The Aesir, the established gods of Asgard, were said to be both fascinated and profoundly disturbed by her powers, and particularly by what they perceived as her insatiable lust for gold, a passion that perhaps seemed unseemly or dangerous to them. The Völuspá recounts a chilling sequence of events. The Aesir shot her through with spears, and in the Allfather's hall they burned her. 3 times burned, 3 times born, often, not seldom, yet she lives still. This graphic description of her repeated, brutal execution, being pierced by spears and then set ablaze within Odin's own sacred hall, only to miraculously regenerate each time, underscores the Aesir's fear and hostility towards her and the powers she represented. After these ordeals, the poem states they called her Heidr, a name which can mean bright one, shining one, or Heath, possibly an ironic title, or another name she adopted. As Heidr, she continued to practice her arts. Described as a Volva wise in ill tidings, she wrought seiðr where she could, seiðr with a charmed mind. She was ever the joy of evil women. This portrayal paints her as a potent, perhaps disruptive, magical practitioner whose influence was seen as pernicious by at least some among the Aesir. This repeated, violent, and ultimately unsuccessful attempt by the Aesir to destroy Gullveig/Heidr is often interpreted by scholars as the direct catalyst for the war. The Vanir, it is reasoned, would have been outraged by the Aesir's brutal and inhospitable treatment of one of their own, assuming Gullveig was indeed a Vanir emissary, a goddess, or at least a figure closely associated with their tribe and its magical traditions. Alternatively, the Vanir may have declared war due to the Aesir's general disdain for or fear of Vanir magic, their values which emphasized fertility and prosperity, or perhaps their different societal customs, such as the practice of sibling marriage, which was acceptable among the Vanir, but viewed less favorably by the Aesir. The conflict, therefore, was likely not merely about the fate of a single individual, however powerful, but represented a deeper clash of cultures, ideologies, spheres of influence, and perhaps even a struggle for dominance between the two divine tribes. The Aesir, with their established focus on martial strength, hierarchical order, and the rule of law, may have viewed the Vanir's emphasis on wealth, sensual pleasure, and what they perceived as potentially subversive magical practices with deep suspicion and outright hostility. The war was, in essence, a collision of two distinct divine worldviews. The events of the war itself were described as fierce, prolonged, and devastating for both sides. The Völuspá memorably states, "Odin cast his spear, hurled it over the host. That was still the first war in the world. The defensive wall of the Aesir's stronghold was broken. The Vanir, indomitable, were trampling the plain." Odin's act of casting his spear over the enemy host was a traditional Germanic ritual to dedicate the enemy to death and formally initiate hostility. The detail that the defensive wall of Asgard itself was breached indicates the formidable power of the Vanir forces. They were not easily repelled and were capable of taking the fight directly to the Aesir's doorstep. Snorri Sturluson, in his accounts, elaborates that both sides experienced periods of victory and periods of defeat. Lands were ravaged, and divine blood was spilled as the conflict raged back and forth across the worlds, with neither side able to achieve a decisive and lasting victory. The Aesir fought with their renowned strength, strategic acumen, and the leadership of figures like Odin and Thor, while the Vanir countered with their own martial prowess, their deep connection to the forces of nature, and perhaps their potent and unsettling seiðr magic. The very fabric of the cosmos trembled with the intensity of their struggle. Realizing that continued conflict would only lead to mutual exhaustion, further devastation, and perhaps even the unraveling of cosmic order, the gods of both tribes eventually decided that peace was preferable to endless war. A truce was called, and representatives from both the Aesir and the Vanir met to negotiate the terms for a lasting cessation of hostilities. To ensure that this peace would endure and to foster a genuine integration of their once warring tribes, they agreed to a significant and binding exchange of hostages. This was a well-established practice in ancient Germanic and Norse society, a solemn means to seal treaties, build trust, and create bonds of kinship between formerly adversarial groups. Each side would entrust some of its most valued members to the other, creating a mutual investment in maintaining the peace. From the ranks of the Aesir, two prominent figures were chosen to go and live among the Vanir in their realm of Vanaheimr. The first was Honir. He was described as a large and remarkably handsome god, a figure who at first glance seemed eminently well-suited for leadership and chieftainship. The second Aesir hostage was the exceptionally wise Mimir, whose profound knowledge and insightful counsel were considered invaluable assets. We have, of course, already encountered Mimir in our previous discussions, particularly concerning his well of wisdom and his ultimate tragic fate. In return, the Vanir sent some of their most distinguished and powerful members to take up residence in Asgard. These were Njörðr, the wealthy and benevolent god of the sea, the winds, fishing, and prosperity, and his two equally famous and influential children. His son Freyr, also known widely as Yngvi Freyr, a beloved god of fertility, peace, bountiful harvests, sunshine, and virility, and his daughter, the radiant Freyja, a complex and powerful goddess associated with love, beauty, desire, seiðr magic, wealth, war, and the fate of a share of the battle slave. It is crucial to understand that these Vanir hostages were not treated as prisoners or inferiors in Asgard. On the contrary, they were quickly and fully integrated into the Aesir assembly. Njörðr and Freyja were even appointed as sacrificial priests, taking on important religious functions within Asgard, and Freyja became a central figure, teaching the art of seiðr to Odin himself. They became highly respected, influential and beloved deities among the Aesir. However, the aspect of the hostage exchange involving Honir and Mimir took a dark and unfortunate turn, primarily for Mimir. The Vanir, upon receiving the impressive-looking Honir, initially made him a chieftain, expecting him to be a capable leader, but they soon discovered a critical flaw. While Honir possessed the appearance of a ruler, he was utterly indecisive and lacked independent judgment, unless the wise Mimir was present to provide him with advice and direction. Whenever Mimir was absent from council and Honir was pressed for a decision on any matter of importance, his invariable and unhelpful response would be, "Let others decide." The Vanir began to feel that the Aesir had tricked them, that they had been shortchanged in the hostage exchange by being given a leader who was, in practical terms, incapable without his advisor. Their resentment grew, and in a fit of anger and profound frustration at this perceived deception, they seized Mimir, brutally beheaded him, and sent his severed head back to Odin in Asgard. This act was a stark violation of the trust inherent in a hostage exchange. Odin, as we have learned in previous detail, was unwilling to lose Mimir's unparalleled wisdom. He took the head, embalmed it with special herbs to prevent its decay, and chanted powerful magical spells over it, restoring its ability to speak. Thus, Mimir's head continued to offer Odin counsel and reveal hidden knowledge. Despite this grim and treacherous episode concerning Mimir's death, the overarching peace between the Aesir and Vanir remarkably held. The exchange of hostages, particularly the successful and harmonious integration of Njörðr, Freyr and Freyja into the society of Asgard, effectively merged the two divine pantheons into a unified whole. The Aesir-Vanir War and its resolution thus signify a crucial evolutionary step in the Norse mythological worldview. It created a more complex, more balanced, and ultimately stronger divine society that incorporated the distinct strengths, attributes and wisdom of both tribes. The Aesir gained invaluable access to the Vanir's deep knowledge of fertility, agriculture, prosperity, and the potent arts of seiðr magic, while the Vanir in turn became integral parts of the ruling structure and religious life of Asgard. This unification was not merely a political convenience, it was vital for the future of the cosmos, as the combined strength, wisdom, and diverse capabilities of both divine families would be absolutely essential to face the monumental cosmic threats that lay ahead. Threats that would culminate in the final, world-altering cataclysm of Ragnarok. Having set the stage with this detailed account of the Aesir-Vanir War, a conflict that reshaped the heavens, let us now turn our focus to the prominent Vanir deities, who, as a result of this ancient treaty, came to dwell in Asgard, beginning with the venerable patriarch of the Vanir, who came to Asgard, Njörðr. Njörðr, pronounced roughly as Njörðr, is one of the foremost deities of the Vanir tribe, revered particularly as the god of the sea, wind, seafaring, fishing, wealth, and prosperity. He embodies the bounty of the ocean and the fair winds that guide ships safely to shore, bringing with them riches from trade and the harvest of the waters. Njörðr is a benevolent deity invoked by sailors for safe voyages, by fishermen for plentiful catches, and by anyone seeking good fortune and material abundance. His very nature is tied to peace and plenty. He became a prominent member of the Aesir assembly in Asgard after the Aesir-Vanir War. His origins lie in Vanaheimr, the homeland of the Vanir. He is the father of two equally famous and beloved deities, Freyja and Freyja, though the identity of their mother is a subject of some mythological ambiguity. Some sources suggest Njörðr was married to his own sister in Vanaheimr, a practice acceptable among the Vanir but not the Aesir, and that she was the mother of his children. When Njörðr came to Asgard, this earlier wife did not accompany him. Njörðr's hall in Asgard is called Notun, a name that beautifully reflects his domain. Notun translates as ship enclosure, haven, or place of ships. It is described as a serene and prosperous dwelling located by the sea, a place where the sound of the waves and the cries of seabirds would be ever present. From Notun, Njörðr governs the movements of the winds, calms the turbulent seas, and bestows wealth upon those who honor him. His hall is a symbol of peace, abundance, and the safe return from voyages. But one of the most famous and detailed stories concerning Njörðr is his marriage to the Jotun Skadi, pronounced Skadi, the formidable daughter of the giant Thjazi. This union was not born of love, but rather as part of a compensation package offered to Skadi by the Aesir after they had killed her father. As we recounted earlier, Thjazi had abducted Idun and her apples of youth, and was subsequently slain by the Aesir when Loki lured him into a trap at Asgard's walls. Furious and seeking vengeance for her father's death, Skadi armed herself and journeyed to Asgard, demanding weregild, compensation for her loss. The Aesir, perhaps wary of Skadi's wrath or wishing to avoid further conflict with Jötnar, agreed to offer her reparations. The first part of the compensation was that they would allow her to choose a husband from among the unmarried gods of Asgard. However, there was a peculiar condition attached to this choice. Skadi had to make her selection based solely on the appearance of their feet. She was not allowed to see their faces or any other part of their bodies. The unmarried gods were lined up, presumably behind a screen or curtain, with only their feet visible. Skadi, desiring the most beautiful of the gods, Baldur, who, in this version of the tale, must have been considered available, or whose marital status was overlooked for the story's purpose, scanned the assembled divine feet. She saw one pair that was exceptionally well-formed, clean, and aesthetically pleasing. Believing these perfect feet must belong to the radiant Baldur, she declared, "These I choose, there can be little that is ugly about Baldur." However, when the screen was removed, Skadi discovered to her dismay that the owner of the beautiful feet was not Baldur, but Njörðr, the god of the sea. Njörðr, being associated with the coast and the ocean, naturally had feet that were constantly washed clean by the waves, making them appear particularly comely. Baldur's feet, in contrast, were presumably less remarkable, or perhaps less exposed to the cleansing sea. The second part of Skadi's compensation was that the Aesir had to make her laugh, something she believed impossible given her grief and anger over her father's death. This seemingly insurmountable task fell to Loki. In a display of his characteristic irreverence and crude buffoonery, Loki tied one end of a cord to the beard of a nanny goat and the other end to his own testicles. He then engaged in a ridiculous tug-of-war with the goat, each pulling and squealing in turn. Eventually, Loki fell into Skadi's lap with a loud yelp. The sheer absurdity and unexpectedness of this undignified spectacle caused Skadi to burst into laughter, thus fulfilling the second condition of her compensation. So Njörðr and Skadi were married. However, their union was fraught with disagreement and incompatibility from the very beginning, primarily due to their vastly different preferred environments. Their story beautifully illustrates the challenges of compromise when two individuals have fundamentally opposing natures and desires. Skadi, a giantess of the mountains, loved the wild, desolate, snow-covered peaks of her homeland, Thrymheim, Thunderhome, or Noisy Home. She reveled in the thrill of the hunt with her bow and skis, the crisp mountain air and the howling of wolves. Njörðr, on the other hand, detested the mountains. He found them cold, barren, and filled with the unsettling noises of wolves and the harsh cries of mountain birds, which disturbed his sleep. His heart longed for his home at Njörðr by the sea, with the gentle lapping of waves, the song of swans, and the bustling activity of the coast. To try and make their marriage work, they initially agreed to a compromise. They would spend a set period of time in each location. One common version of the myth states they decided to spend 9 nights, a significant number in Norse mythology, often representing a cycle or a longer undefined period in Thrymheimr, Skadi's mountain realm. And then 9 nights in Njörðr, Njörðr's seaside hall. When they returned from their first stay in the mountains, Njörðr expressed his displeasure poetically. Loath were the mountains to me. I was not long in them, only 9 nights. The howling of wolves seemed ugly to me after the song of swans. Skadi in turn voiced her dissatisfaction after their stay at Nautun. Sleep I could not on the seabed for the screeching of birds. That gull wakes me when from the wide sea he comes each morning. She found the constant noise of the seabirds and the dampness of the coast just as unbearable as Njörðr found the cold and the wolves of the mountains. Their fundamental differences were irreconcilable. The wild, untamed nature of the mountain giantess could not find lasting peace with the serene, cultured god of the sea. Eventually they agreed to live separately. Skadi returned to her beloved mountains, to Þrymæja, where she continued to hunt on her skis and became known as Ongjörgard, Snowshoe God, or Ondurdis, Snowshoe Lady, a powerful and independent goddess of winter, skiing, and hunting. Njörðr remained at Nautun, content by his shores, governing the winds and the wealth of the sea. Despite the failure of their marriage, both Njörðr and Skadi continued to be respected deities. Their story serves as a poignant mythological exploration of incompatible natures and the difficulty of bridging fundamental differences, even among gods and giants. Njörðr, through it all, remained a symbol of prosperity, gentle waters, and fair winds, a steadfast and benevolent Vanir god who found his true home and happiness by the ever-moving sea. His name, resonant with authority and benevolence, simply means Lord. He is frequently honoured with the epithet Yngvi Freyr, a title that inextricably links him to the Ynglings, the ancient and revered Swedish royal dynasty who proudly claimed him as their divine ancestor and progenitor. Freyja stands as a multifaceted and deeply cherished deity within the Norse pantheon, primarily venerated as the god of abundant fertility, enduring virility, lasting peace, widespread prosperity, life-giving sunshine, and bountiful harvests. He is the embodiment of life's vibrant forces, the guarantor of plenty and a beacon of joy. His divine influence was considered absolutely essential for the well-being and continuation of both the land and its people, ensuring the cycles of growth and renewal. Freyja, like his sister Freyja and their father Njörðr, originated from the verdant realm of Vanaheimr, the ancestral homeland of the Vanir god. Following the pivotal Aesir-Vanir War, he, along with his kin, came to Asgard as part of the crucial hostage exchange that sealed the peace between the two divine tribes. In Asgard, Freyja was not merely accepted, but was quickly embraced and deeply revered by the Aesir. They entrusted him with dominion over the luminous realm of Alfheimr, the world inhabited by the Ljósálfar, or the Light Elves. This significant stewardship further underscores Freyja's intrinsic connection to light, pristine beauty, generative power, and natural growth. Alfheimr itself is consistently described in myth as a radiant, ethereal, and breathtakingly beautiful place, a fitting domain for a god of his benevolent and life-affirming nature. Freyja is the possessor of several truly remarkable and magical treasures, magnificent gifts bestowed upon him by the unparalleled master craftsmen of the mythical world, the Dvergar, or dwarves. The first and perhaps most versatile of these is his wondrous and sentient ship Skíðbladnir, pronounced roughly Skíðbladnir. This extraordinary vessel was meticulously crafted by the sons of Ivaldi, a renowned family of dwarven smiths known for their exceptional skill and artistry. Skíðbladnir was no mere seafaring vessel. It was a marvel of magical engineering. It was capacious enough to comfortably hold all the Aesir gods, fully armed and prepared for battle should such a need ever arise. Yet, through the wonders of dwarfen artifice and enchantment, this massive ship could be ingeniously and meticulously folded up much like a precious piece of silk cloth until it was diminutive enough to fit neatly into Freyja's pocket or pouch. Most remarkably, whenever Skíðbladnir's sail was hoisted, it would unfailingly catch a fair and favourable wind, ensuring a swift, smooth and direct journey to its intended destination, irrespective of the prevailing weather conditions or the whims of the sea. It was a true testament to dwarving ingenuity, symbolizing not only the grandeur of divine travel and the ability to traverse vast distances, but also magical convenience, adaptability, and the god's mastery over the natural elements. His second extraordinary and iconic possession is his resplendent golden boar, Gullinbursti, a name that translates evocatively as golden bristles or golden mane. This magnificent and radiant creature was expertly forged by the renowned dwarf brothers Brokkr and Sindri. Sindri is also known as Initri in some accounts. During a famous and fiercely contested challenge of smithing skills, a contest instigated by the ever-mischievous Loki. Gullinbursti's golden bristles shone with such an intense, otherworldly luminescence that they could effortlessly illuminate the darkest night, transforming midnight into midday as he charged across the landscape. This magical boar was possessed of incredible swiftness, able to run with unparalleled speed through the air and over water, easily outstripping any horse. Freyja often rode atop Gullinbursti, or had the boar draw his chariot, and Gullinbursti became another potent and widely recognized symbol of Freyja's connection to fertility, as boars frequently were in ancient European cultures, representing fecundity and untamed life force, and to the life-giving, dispelling power of radiant light overcoming darkness. However, the most famous, most poignant, and most extensively recounted story associated with Freyja is his overwhelming, all-consuming love for the breathtakingly beautiful Jötun maiden, Gerðr, pronounced roughly Gerðr. Gerðr was the daughter of the giant Njörðr and the giantess Urbora. This deeply emotional and dramatic tale is primarily preserved in the Eddic poem Skirnismal, also known by the titles The Lay of Skirnir or Skirnir's Journey. We shall now embark on a detailed exploration of this pivotal poem, virtually stanza by stanza, to fully capture the profound depth of Freyja's passion, the perilous journey undertaken for his sake, and the dramatic, morally complex events that unfolded. The poem Skirnismal is not merely a love story. It also reveals a great deal about the personalities and motivations of the characters involved, the potent use of magic and coercion in the pursuit of desire, and the sometimes stark, even unsettling nature of divine will. The poem commences by establishing a scene of Freyja's profound and inexplicable melancholy, a deep sorrow that has enveloped the usually joyful god. Skirnismal, stanzas 1 to 5. Detailed paraphrase and explanation. One fateful day, Freyr, the noble son of Njörðr, took the audacious step of seating himself in Hlíðgjálf. This was Odin's sacred high seat, a place of immense power from which the All-Father could gaze out and see into all the 9 worlds, observing all events that transpired. As Freyr looked out from this vantage point, his gaze fell upon Jötunheimr, the rugged and often hostile realm of the giants. There, in that distant land, he beheld a maiden of such dazzling, almost unbearable beauty that she seemed to radiate light. He saw her walking with grace from her father Gymir's hall towards her private bower. As this maiden Gerðr raised her arms to open the door, her bare arms themselves shone with such a brilliant, pure light that they illuminated both the vast sky above and the wide sea below. Indeed, all the world seemed to be made more radiant by her luminous fairness. This sudden, overwhelming vision struck Freyja to the very core of his being. As a direct consequence, or perhaps as a form of divine retribution for his temerity in occupying Odin's sacred seat without permission, a profound and debilitating lovesickness, a heavy, soul-crushing grief, overcame him. Freyja became utterly withdrawn, enveloped in silence, and entirely consumed by an inescapable, burning longing for this unknown giantess. Njörðr, Ver's father, and Skadi, Njörðr's wife, though in some mythological timelines Skadi has already separated from Njörðr by this point, the poem places her here, emphasizing the family's concern, become greatly alarmed by Freyja's sudden, deep, and uncharacteristic depression. They summon Skirnir, who is not just Freyja's loyal servant and messenger, but also his trusted friend and confidant. Skirnir's name itself, meaning bright one or shining one, perhaps hints at his role as an illuminator of Freyr's dark mood, or as one who brings clarity. Stansmail stanzas 6 to 11, detailed paraphrase and explanation. Skadi, taking the initiative, urges Skirnir to approach Freyr and inquire directly why he is so profoundly sorrowful and seemingly angry that he refuses to speak to anyone, isolating himself in his grief. Njörðr echoes this concern, pressing Skirnir to discover who or what has caused such distress to his beloved son. Skirnir, though understandably reluctant and anticipating a potentially harsh or dismissive reply from his grief-stricken lord, loyally agrees to undertake the delicate task. He approaches Freyr and questions him directly, asking why he sits alone in the hall, cloaked in such deep mourning, and why darkness seems to fill his days, extinguishing his usual radiance. Freyja, his defenses perhaps lowered by Skirnir's genuine concern, finally responds. He laments how he can possibly convey to Skirnir the immense weight of his sorrow. He explains that although the Elfa ray, a poetic term for sunshine, shines brightly each day upon the world, it brings no light or warmth to his own desires. He then reveals the cause of his torment. He has seen a maiden in the courts of the giant Ymir, a girl for whom he now longs with every fibre of his being. He describes her luminous arms, which shone so brightly that the sea and air themselves seemed to gleam in response. "More beloved to me is that maiden," Freyr passionately declares, "than any young man ever loved a girl in all of ancient days." Yet, despite the intensity of his love, he despairs, stating, "No one, neither among the Aesir nor the Álfar, wills that we two should be together." This highlights his perception of the insurmountable barriers, particularly the deep-seated animosity between gods and giants, that stand in the way of his love. Freyja's despair is palpable, his hope seemingly extinguished by the perceived impossibility of his desire. He is utterly smitten, yet convinced that his love for Gerðr is a hopeless, doomed affair. Kinsmore, stanzas 12 to 19, detailed paraphrase and explanation. Skirnir, ever loyal and resourceful, does not succumb to Freyja's despair. Instead, he bravely offers to undertake the arduous and perilous journey into the heart of Jötunheimr, to woo the maiden Gerðr on Freyja's behalf. This is no small undertaking, as Jötunheimr is a dangerous land for any god. However, Skirnir makes specific requests of Freyja for this critical mission. He asks for Freyja's own horse, a steed capable of carrying him safely through the dark, flickering magical flames, and past the formidable defenses that undoubtedly surround Gymir's hall. More crucially, Skirnir requests Freyja's most prized possession, his extraordinary magical sword. This sword is no ordinary weapon. It is described as being so potent and imbued with such unique magic that it can fight entirely on its own, without needing to be wielded, provided its owner is wise or it is directed by a skilled hand. Freyja, utterly consumed by his lovesickness and desperate for any glimmer of hope, any chance, however slim, to win Gerðr's affection, readily and without hesitation agrees to give Skirnir both his magical horse and his peerless, self-fighting sword. This is a decision of enormous consequence, a sacrifice of immense personal and strategic value. Giving away such a potent and unique weapon will leave Freyr significantly vulnerable in the future, a vulnerability that will have dire and tragic consequences for him during the final cosmic battle of Ragnarok. But in this moment, his love for Gerðr eclipses all other considerations. Equipped with Freyja's magical horse and his formidable sword, Skirnir sets off on his challenging journey into the land of the giants. Mismal, stanzas 20 to 23. Detailed paraphrase and explanation. Skirnir rides through the deep darkness of night, traversing treacherous misty mountains, and finally enters the forbidding territory of Jötunheimr. He eventually arrives at the heavily guarded and imposing hall of the giant Ymir. Outside the fortifications, he observes fierce, menacing dogs chained as sentinels, and a herdsman sitting watchfully on a burial mound or hillock. Skirnir, with courage, addresses this herdsman, inquiring how he might find an opportunity to speak with Gymir's young daughter, Gerðr, and how he might bypass the ferocious hounds. The herdsman's reply is grim and ominous. He tells Skirnir that he is either already fated to die or is, for all intents and purposes, a dead man walking. if his intention is truly to speak with Gerðr, implying the extreme danger of such an endeavor. Undeterred by this dire warning, Skilnir presses onward, resolved to fulfill his mission for Freyja. Inside Gymir's hall, Gerðr herself hears the commotion and unusual disturbances outside. The very earth seems to tremble, and Gymir's courts shake with an unfamiliar presence. Skinnersmal stanzas 24 to 27, detailed paraphrase and explanation. Gerðr, alarmed by the strange sounds, asks one of her serving maids what is causing such a terrible noise and disturbance. The maid ventures out to investigate and reports back that a man has dismounted outside their gates and has let his horse graze freely, an act of some confidence or audacity. Gerðr, despite the potential danger and the unknown identity of the visitor, instructs the maid to invite the stranger into their hall and offer him a drink of their famous strong mead. This act of hospitality, even towards a potential enemy, was a significant custom. However, Gerðr also expresses a lingering fear, a premonition perhaps, that this unexpected visitor might be her brother's slayer. This mention of a brother is enigmatic and is not fully elaborated upon in this poem or clearly connected to other known myths, adding a layer of mystery to Gerðr's backstory and her initial apprehension. Skirnir enters the giant's hall and stands before Gerðr. He does not waste time with elaborate pleasantries or subtle diplomacy. His approach is direct and to the point. Skirnismal, stanzas 28 to 31, detailed paraphrase and explanation. Skirnir immediately presents Freyja's proposal of love. As a first offering, he presents Gerðr with 11 shining golden apples. These are likely not the ordinary apples of youth guarded by Idun, but rather symbols of immense wealth, beauty, and perhaps fertility, offered as a bride price or love gift. He asks if she will grant Freyja her love and agree to meet him in return for these precious apples. Gerðr, however, flatly and proudly refuses this initial offer. She declares with disdain that she will never accept these apples or any such gift as payment for any man's favor. Furthermore, she states unequivocally that she and Freyja will never live together, rejecting the proposal entirely. Her initial stance is one of fierce independence and perhaps a typical giant's suspicion or hostility towards the gods. Skirnir, undaunted by this firm and immediate rejection, then offers her another, even more magnificent treasure, hoping to sway her. Skirnzimmel, stanza 32. Detailed paraphrase and explanation. He now presents to Gerðr the magical ring Draupnir. This is Odin's own wondrous ring, from which 8 new rings of identical weight and purity drip every 9th night. Draupnir is a symbol of boundless, self-replicating wealth and divine authority. While some scholarly debate exists whether this is indeed Odin's famous ring, or perhaps another ring of the same name and properties, its value is clearly presented as immense and almost irresistible. Yet Gerðr again refuses. She states coolly that she has no lack of gold or treasures in her father Gymir's courts, and therefore has no desire for Freyja's ring, however magical or valuable it might be. Her pride and self-sufficiency remain intact. Having failed to persuade Gerðr with offers of rich and wondrous gifts, Skirnir's approach now takes a darker, more menacing turn. He reveals the powerful, gleaming sword that Freyja had entrusted to him, and his words shift from persuasion to direct threats. Spansmal, stanzas 33 to 35, detailed paraphrase and explanation. Skirnir shows Gerðr the sharp, intimidating sword in his hand, and threatens to use it to cut off her head if she does not yield to Freyja's desire and accept his proposal. This is a stark shift to coercion through the threat of physical violence. Gerðr, however, remains defiant even in the face of this mortal threat. She retorts bravely that she will never submit to any man's coercion or force. She further warns Skirnir that if he and her father, the formidable giant Njörðr, should meet in combat, a fierce and bloody battle can surely be expected, implying her father would protect her. Skirnir, realizing that simple threats of violence against the proud giantess are insufficient, now unleashes the full and terrifying force of his persuasive powers, shifting from physical intimidation to a series of potent and horrifying magical curses. He begins to invoke powerful runes and chant dreadful incantations, demonstrating his own considerable magical abilities, perhaps learned from Freyr or inherent to his nature as a bright being connected to the Vanir. This is the darkest and most morally troubling section of the poem, showcasing the coercive and potentially cruel nature of the wooing when desire is thwarted. See Skirnismal stanzas 36 to 41, detailed paraphrase and explanation. Skirnir dramatically declares that he will strike Gerðr with his gambuntian, often translated as a magic wand, staff of power, or curse stick, to magically tame her and bend her to his will. He then begins to lay a series of terrifying and detailed curses upon her, painting a vivid picture of a desolate and tormented existence. She will be sent to a remote and desolate place, where no human will ever see her or interact with her again. She will sit alone on an eagle's mound, a kenning for a high, exposed, desolate place, perhaps associated with death or ill omen, perpetually looking out towards the grim realm of hell, the land of the dead, and forever turned away from the joys and comforts of the world of men. Food itself will become more loathsome and repulsive to her than a shining, venomous serpent is to ordinary humans, ensuring she finds no sustenance or pleasure. She will become a public spectacle of misery, more famous for her wretchedness and torment than the god Heimdallr is for his constant vigilant watchfulness at Bifrost Bridge. She will pine away, consumed by an unbearable, unfulfillable longing. He calls upon Hrimgrimnir, a named frost giant, and other giants of that realm to witness and enforce his curses, adding weight and terror to his pronouncements. She will either be given to a monstrous, three-headed giant to be his unwilling bride, or she will live out her days without the companionship of any man, utterly alone and unloved. Unbearable, maddening desire and a desperate, frenzied longing, Urgi, Adi, Ottoli, will seize her and never release their grip. She will weep endlessly. Instead of ever feeling joy, she will live a life of unending misery among the cold and cruel frost giants, or dwell in a state of perpetual impotence, frustration, and torment. He details a litany of afflictions, to be hated and reviled by all, to be like a common thistle that is carelessly crushed and discarded at the end of harvest, barren, useless, and wretched. Skirnir then states that he has carved powerful, malevolent runes to enact these curses, specifically a Thurs rune, representing giants, destructive force, and pain, and 3 other named, potent runes: Urgi, invoking feelings of perversion, intolerable desire or unmanliness; Adi, bringing madness, uncontrollable frenzy and rage; and Otholi, inflicting unbearable suffering, impatience, and constant agitation. He concludes this terrifying barrage by declaring that, just as he has carved these runes to bind her, he also possesses the power to uncarve them, to lift the curses, but only if she complies with Freyja's wishes. This offers her a sliver of hope, but only through submission. Faced with these horrifying, detailed, and potent magical threats, which promise a fate far worse than a quick death, Gerðr's proud resolve finally shatters. The psychological weight of the curses, combined with Skirnir's relentless pressure, proves too much for her to bear. Skirnismal. Stanzas 42 to 44. Detailed paraphrase and explanation. Gerðr, now visibly subdued and her defiance broken, offers Skirnir a crystal cup filled with ancient, precious mead. This offering can be seen as a gesture of peace, submission, or a formal sealing of an agreement. She admits with a tone of resignation that she never thought she would yield to the love or desire of any member of the Vanir tribe. Skirnir, seizing the moment of her capitulation, immediately presses her for a firm and binding commitment. When and where will she consent to meet with Freyja? Gerðr names a specific place, a quiet and secluded grove known as Bari. She states that this grove is known to both her and Freyja, suggesting it might be a liminal space, perhaps neutral territory between Jötunheimr and the realms of the gods. She agrees to meet Freyja there after a period of 9 nights has passed. There, in the tranquility of Bari, she will grant him her love and consent to be with him. The period of 9 nights is significant in Norse mythology, often representing a complete cycle or a magically potent duration of time. Skirnir, his difficult and morally fraught mission now successfully accomplished, takes the cup of mead, perhaps sealing the pact, and then rides swiftly back to Asgard. Asum stanzas 45 to 48 detail paraphrase and explanation. Freyja is waiting outside, consumed by anxiety and impatience, his gaze fixed on the path Skirnir must take. As soon as he sees his loyal servant returning, he eagerly calls out, demanding news before Skirnir has even had a chance to dismount or catch his breath. Skirnir delivers the welcome news. Gerðr has agreed to meet Freyja in the sacred grove of Buri after 9 nights have passed. Freyja, however, is so consumed by his impatient longing, so overwhelmed by his desire for Gerðr, that even this relatively short delay of 9 nights feels like an unbearable eternity. He utters his famous, poignant lament, which beautifully captures the intensity of lovesickness. Long is 1 night, long are 2 nights. How shall I bear 3? Often a month has seemed less time to me than half this night of waiting for our bridal tryst. And so the ancient poem Skirnismál concludes with Freyr set to finally win his beloved Gerðr. However, this victory comes at a tremendous personal cost, the irrevocable sacrifice of his magnificent, self-fighting sword. This unique weapon, which possessed the power to fight on its own accord, was given to Skirnir as both a tool for the mission and as a reward for undertaking the perilous and morally complex wooing of Gerðr. The loss of this unparalleled sword will leave Freyja dangerously vulnerable in the final cataclysmic battle of Ragnarok. It is prophesied that during this cosmic conflict, Freyja will face the mighty fire giant Surt, the fearsome leader of the destructive forces from Muspelheimr. Because he lacks his magical sword, Freyja, despite his inherent divinity and valor, will be slain by Surt. Some mythological sources poignantly recount that Freyja fights his final battle armed only with an antler, a desperate and makeshift weapon. This detail serves as a testament to his bravery and determination, but also underscores the tragic insufficiency of such an implement against Surt's devastating, flaming sword. Freyja's earlier choice, driven by overwhelming love, thus has fatal long-term consequences. A common theme in Norse mythology where fate and personal decisions are inextricably intertwined. Beyond this central and defining myth of his love for Gerðr, Freyja's cult was one of the most significant, widespread, and deeply cherished in all of Scandinavia. He was truly a god of the people, his influence deeply connected to the fundamental cycles of nature, human life, and societal well-being. Extensive archaeological, historical, and literary evidence points to his extensive and fervent worship throughout the Viking Age and beyond. Temples were dedicated to him, most famously the great and opulent temple at Uppsala in Sweden. This sacred site is described in considerable detail by the 11th century German chronicler Adam of Bremen in his work Gesta Hammerbugensis Ecclesiae Pontificum, Deeds of the Bishops of Hamburg. Adam recounts that in this magnificent, gold-adorned temple, statues of 3 principal gods were venerated. Thor, depicted as the mightiest, Odin, the god of war and wisdom, and Frigga, a Latinized form of Freyja, who was prominently displayed as a god of peace and pleasure, often, according to Adam, with a large conspicuous phallus, explicitly emphasizing his crucial role as a god of fertility, virility, and abundance. Adam of Bremen also describes that great sacrifices, including both animals and, disturbingly, humans, were made to these gods at Uppsala, particularly during a major festival held every 9 years. At these festivals, it was customary to hang the bodies of the sacrificed men and animals from the trees in a sacred grove near the temple. A sacred well was also said to be nearby, where further rituals took place. While Adam's account must be read with some caution, as he was a Christian chronicler writing about pagan practices he disapproved of, his description provides invaluable insight into the importance of Freyja in a major cultic center. Freyja was especially invoked for good harvests, for peace, known in Old Norse as Friður, a profound state of peace, prosperity, and goodwill, and for general sacrifices were made to him at the beginning of winter during the festival of Vetránata, winter nights to ensure a good and fruitful year ahead. He was also closely associated with weddings and other celebrations of life, love, and abundance, with couples seeking his blessing for fertility and happiness. Processions involving idols or symbols of Freyja were likely a significant part of his worship. Tacitus, a much earlier Roman historian, describes a Germanic goddess Njörðr, whose attributes are very similar to the Vanir, particularly Njörðr and Freyja, whose idol was paraded through the countryside in a covered wagon to bless the land and bring peace. Similar practices may have continued with Freyr, intended to spread his blessings of fertility and prosperity over the fields and communities. The boar, his sacred animal, Gullinbursti, was also a prominent symbol in his cult, and boar-shaped cakes, sonargorgol, were sometimes sacrificed or consumed during Yule feasts, with vows being made upon them for the coming year. His epithet Yngvi and the combined name Yngvi Freyr are of particular importance, as they connect him directly to the Yngling dynasty of Swedish kings. The Ynglinga saga, the first part of Snorri Sturluson's Heimskringla, traces the lineage of these kings back to Freyr himself, who is presented as a wise and peaceful earthly ruler in Sweden after the time of Odin. His divine ancestry served to legitimize the kingship of the Ynglings, tying their rule directly to divine favor, the prosperity of the land, and the well-being of their people. Freyr, in this euhemerized account, established laws, brought great wealth, and ensured such peace that his reign was called Frodafrida, Peace of Frey/Freyja. After his death, he was buried in a great mound, and the Swedes continued to sacrifice to him for peace and good seasons. Freyja's enduring popularity and the widespread nature of his cult stemmed from his overwhelmingly benevolent nature and his direct, tangible connection to the most essential aspects of human life: ensuring peace, providing plenty, blessing the land with fertility, and safeguarding the continuation of generations. He was a god who brought joy, abundance, and stability, a shining lord of the golden harvest, a divine king who ruled with peace, and a passionate lover who sacrificed greatly for his desire. His worship reflected the deep yearning of the Norse people for a world blessed with peace and prosperity, under the gentle watch of a benevolent lord. Freyja, whose name translates simply and profoundly to lady, stands as a paramount goddess within the intricate tapestry of Norse mythology. She is the cherished daughter of Njörðr, the sea god, and the twin sister of the radiant Freyr. Originating from the Vanir, the tribe of gods associated with fertility and prosperity, Freyja, along with her father and brother, transitioned to Asgard following the momentous Aesir-Vanir War. In this new divine assembly, she was not merely assimilated, but rose to a position of immense prominence and reverence, celebrated for her unparalleled beauty, sought after for her profound wisdom in magical arts, and deeply respected for her formidable power. Freyja's divine portfolio is remarkably diverse, showcasing a captivating amalgamation of attributes that might initially seem disparate, but together form a complete and powerful feminine archetype. She is, perhaps most famously, the quintessential goddess of love, intoxicating beauty, potent desire, and unrestrained sensuality. Her allure was the stuff of legends, a divine radiance that ensnared the hearts and minds of gods, formidable Jötnar, and even the master craftsmen dwarves. Such was the power of her beauty that it frequently became a catalyst for grand quests, heated desires, and sometimes intense conflicts among many notable figures in the mythological narratives. It is poetically recounted that when Freyja weeps, often out of longing or sorrow, her tears cascade as pure red gold, a poignant symbol of both her profound emotional depth and the precious, almost tangible nature of her divine essence. Beyond her captivating physical beauty and her dominion over matters of the heart, Freyja is the foremost and most skilled practitioner of seiðr among all the deities. Seiðr was a particularly potent, often mysterious and highly specialized form of Norse magic. This practice encompassed a wide array of abilities: divination, the capacity to foresee future events and perceive hidden truths, the power to influence and shape fate, both for individuals and larger events, the ability to commune with spirits of the dead and other entities, and the casting of intricate spells for purposes of healing, protection, cursing, or illusion. The performance of seiðr often involved specific rituals, such as the practitioner sitting on a high platform or a special seat known as a seiðr, entering trance states through chanting specific incantations, Gerðr, and sometimes using a staff or distaff as a magical implement. It was Freyja herself who introduced and meticulously taught the complex art of seiðr to Odin, the Allfather, and subsequently to the other Aesir. This act was a monumental contribution, as it endowed the Aesir with a powerful new set of tools and understanding, significantly broadening their divine capabilities. While seiðr was incredibly effective, its practice by men was sometimes viewed with social ambivalence or even disdain, occasionally labelled as ergi, a term implying effeminacy, unmanliness, or perversion. This societal view is something Loki, in his characteristic role as a provocateur, often throws as an insult, particularly towards Odin in the poem Lokasenna. Nevertheless, Odin, ever the seeker of wisdom and power, embraced seiðr despite these connotations, recognizing its profound strategic and esoteric value. Freyja's unparalleled mastery of seiðr made her an exceptionally formidable figure, one capable of weaving the very threads of destiny, uncovering the deeper secrets, and wielding influence in ways that brute force never could. Perhaps more unexpectedly for a goddess so intrinsically linked with love and beauty, Freyja is also a fierce and respected warrior goddess, a deity intimately connected with the raw realities of battle and death. She is far from a passive, merely beautiful figure. She is depicted as one who actively rides to battle, arrayed in her martial splendor, ready to engage in the fray. This martial aspect of her divine character is most clearly and significantly demonstrated in her role as the sovereign ruler of her own distinct afterlife realm, known as Folkvangra. This name translates evocatively as field of the host, people field, or army field, clearly indicating its martial nature. Within the expansive domain of Folkvangra stands her magnificent and spacious hall, Sessrumnir. The name Sessrumnir means seat roomy, or hall with many seats, powerfully suggesting its capacity to welcome and house a great multitude of chosen warriors. Of paramount importance is Freyja's divinely ordained right to choose one half of all warriors, who die bravely and honorably in battle, to come and dwell with her in Folkvung. The other half, as is more widely known, are chosen by Odin to reside in his famed hall, Valhalla, where they prepare for Ragnarok. This shared selection of the battle slain makes Freyja a highly significant psychopomp, a guide of souls to the afterlife, and elevates her to a central position within the Norse warrior ideology and eschatology. The fact that she receives an equal share of these heroic dead alongside Odin himself serves to underscore her immense status, her authority, and her profound power in matters of war, death, and the afterlife. It strongly suggests that to be chosen by Freyja and to reside in Folkvang was considered as honorable, prestigious, and desirable for a fallen warrior as being chosen for Valhalla. While sources are scarce on the specific criteria for selection beyond valor or the exact nature of existence in Folkvanga, one might infer from Freyja's other domains that life there, while still martial and prepared for cosmic conflict, might also have encompassed elements of joy, beauty, and perhaps the passions she governed, offering a different, though equally esteemed, afterlife experience compared to the more singularly focused warrior ethos of Valhalla. Freyja is renowned for her possession of several extraordinary and iconic treasures, each imbued with magic and symbolic meaning. Her most celebrated and deeply cherished item is the breathtakingly beautiful necklace known as Brísingamen. The name Brísingamen is often interpreted as gleaming necklace, fiery necklace, or necklace of the Brísings, possibly referring to a tribe or a term for fire/gleam. The dramatic and morally complex story of its acquisition, primarily detailed in later medieval Icelandic sources, such as the Sola Tatra, the Tale of Sorli, has become inextricably linked with her legend, revealing much about Freyja's intense desires, her determination, and the sometimes morally ambiguous, transactional nature of divine interactions. As the tale recounts, Freyja, in her travels, once chanced upon 4 exceptionally skilled dwarves, their names recorded as Alfrig, Divalin, Berlin, and Gur, deeply engrossed in their subterranean smithy. They were in the process of putting the final masterful touches on an incredibly beautiful and intricately wrought golden necklace, a piece of such exquisite craftsmanship and radiant splendor that it seemed to capture the light of the stars themselves. Freyja, upon beholding it, was instantly and overwhelmingly captivated by its unparalleled beauty. An intense desire to possess the Brísingamen seized her, a longing more profound than for any other treasure. She immediately offered the 4 dwarven smiths vast quantities of gold and silver in exchange for the necklace. However, the dwarfs, perhaps sensing the depth of her desire or having other motivations, refused her monetary offers, stating that the Brísingamen was not for sale in that conventional manner. The dwarves then revealed their true price. Freyja could obtain the coveted necklace if and only if she agreed to spend one night with each of them in succession. This was a shocking and demanding proposition. After a period of deliberation, Freyja, so utterly consumed by her desire for the exquisite Brísingamen, made the difficult decision to agree to their terms. Consequently, she spent 4 consecutive nights, one with each of the 4 dwarves. In return for her compliance, they presented her with the Brísingamen. Freyja then wore it constantly, and it served to enhance her already legendary beauty and divine radiance, becoming her most recognizable attribute. The necklace itself can be seen as symbolic of her irresistible allure, her connection to wealth and precious things, her sovereignty, and perhaps even as an emblem of the earth's fecundity and the fiery creative forces of the deep earth from which it was wrought. The ever-watchful and mischievous Loki, however, soon discovered the secret of Freyja's transaction with the dwarves. True to his nature, he reported the matter to Odin. The Allfather was reportedly displeased by Freyja's actions, perhaps viewing them as unbecoming of a goddess of her high stature. Or perhaps it was simply an opportunity to exert his authority. Odin then commanded Loki to undertake the difficult task of stealing the Brísingamen from Freyja, possibly as a form of chastisement or as leverage for future demands. Loki, a master of stealth, cunning, and transformation, set about his task. He found Freyja's private bower within Sessrumnir, securely locked and guarded. Undeterred, he first transformed himself into a tiny fly, meticulously searching for any minuscule opening through which he might enter. Finding none, he then shifted his form into that of an even smaller flea. In this guise, he managed to slip unseen into Freyja's chamber. He found the goddess asleep, peacefully wearing the Brísingamen. The clasp of the necklace, however, was situated at the back of her neck, inaccessible as she lay. To remedy this, Loki, still in his flea form, bit Freyja sharply on the cheek. Startled by the bite, Freyja stirred and turned over in her sleep, inadvertently exposing the clasp. Loki then carefully unfastened the necklace, stole it from around her neck, and triumphantly brought the precious Brísingamen to Odin. When Freyja awoke and discovered that her beloved and most treasured possession was missing, she was overcome with distress and righteous fury. Her intuition immediately pointed to Odin's involvement, and she confronted him directly. Odin did not deny his role in the theft, but laid down a severe and complex condition for the necklace's return. He commanded Freyja to use her divine influence and magical abilities to instigate and perpetuate a terrible, unending war between 2 powerful human kings, named Hogni and Hedin. These kings were each served by 20 loyal vassal kings, making the ensuing conflict known as the Njörðr, Battle of the Hedlenar, a war of massive scale and devastation. This was not to be an ordinary war, it was to be a magical, cyclical slaughter. The slain warriors on both sides would be supernaturally revived each morning to fight anew, their hatred and violence replaying endlessly. This dreadful enchantment was fated to last until a Christian man, embodying a new faith and a new order, finally intervened to end the carnage. Freyja, desperate to regain her Brísingamen, and perhaps seeing no other recourse against Odin's decree, agreed to these grim terms. She successfully set the tragic conflict in motion, and eventually, her necklace was restored to her. This intricate and rather dark tale serves to highlight not only Freyja's intense desires and determination, but also Odin's often manipulative and morally ambiguous nature, and the profound, often tragic interweaving of divine affairs with the fates and sufferings of mortal humans. The detail of a Christian man ending the spell is particularly fascinating, as it reflects the later period in which this tale was recorded, showing how Norse mythographers were beginning to incorporate elements and perspectives from the encroaching Christian worldview into their ancient narratives. Later mythological accounts also tell of Loki stealing Brísingamen on another occasion, only for it to be heroically recovered by the god Heimdallar, after a fierce, shape-shifting battle where both combatants transformed into seals. Another of Freyja's highly significant and versatile possessions is her magical falcon-cloak, sometimes referred to by the name Valshammer, which can be interpreted as falcon shape, falcon plumage, or hawkskin. This extraordinary garment is meticulously crafted from falcon feathers, and it grants its wearer the wondrous ability to transform into a falcon or a similar raptor, and fly with incredible speed and agility across the vast expanses of the 9 worlds. Freyja frequently utilized this cloak for her own purposes, allowing her to travel swiftly and observe events from afar. However, she was also known to be generous with it, lending it to other gods and goddesses when a critical need arose. Most notably, she lent her falcon-cloak to Loki on several crucial occasions, when he needed to fly to Jötunheimr on a desperate mission to rescue Idun and her life-preserving apples from the giant Tjazi, and also when he journeyed to the perilous court of the giant Gerðr. The god Thor also famously borrowed Freyja's falcon cloak when his mighty hammer Mjolnir was stolen by the giant Thruma, and he needed to travel to Jötunheimr to investigate. This falcon cloak serves as a potent symbol of Freyja's power, her ability to effortlessly traverse realms and cross boundaries, her connection to keen sight, foresight, and swift, decisive action. And it also highlights her occasional willingness to aid others in the divine community, sometimes with an expectation of reciprocity. The falcon itself, as a creature, often symbolizes nobility, keen vision, and a connection to the celestial, further enhancing the cloak's symbolic resonance. Freyja is also renowned for her unique and highly distinctive mode of transportation, a magnificent chariot pulled by a pair of large and powerful cats. These felines are often described in poetic sources as grey or blue, and they could be interpreted as formidable forest cats, swift lynxes, or perhaps even a mythical breed of cat unique to her service. This image of Freyja, the radiant goddess, majestically driving her cat-drawn chariot, is one of the most iconic, memorable, and visually striking in all of Norse mythology. Cats, in many ancient cultures and folklore traditions, are frequently associated with magic, mystery, independence, intuition, and sensuality, all qualities that align perfectly with Freyja's complex and multifaceted divine nature. Their presence as her chosen draft animals further underscores her unique position and her command over forces that are both wild and alluring. In addition to her celebrated cat chariot, Freyja is also known to ride a magnificent and formidable boar named Hildisvini, which translates appropriately as battle swine. This boar is far more than just an animal companion or a simple mount. According to the intricate Eddic poem Hyndluljóð, the lay of Hildisvini is actually Freyja's human protege, and likely her lover, a young man named Ottar in Einfaldi, Ottar the Simple, or Ottar the Foolish, whom she has magically disguised in the form of this fierce boar. In this particular poem, Freyja, riding atop the transformed Ottar, as Hildisvini, journeys to the dwelling of an ancient and incredibly knowledgeable giantess named Hyndla. Freyja's purpose in undertaking this visit is to compel Hyndla to reveal the complete and detailed ancestry of Ottar. This genealogical information is crucial because Ottar has made a significant wager with a king named Angontyr regarding the nobility and extent of his lineage. and he needs this proof to win. Freyja passionately champions Ottar's cause throughout the poem, fiercely protecting him and even threatening the reluctant and somewhat cantankerous Njörðr with magical consuming fire to extract the necessary ancestral lore. This episode vividly showcases Freyja's protective and empowering nature, her fierce loyalty to those she favors, and her willingness to wield her considerable power and influence to aid them in their endeavors. The transformation of Ottar into a boar is also significant. Boars were potent symbols of fertility and martial prowess in Norse culture, linking this aspect of Freyja to her brother, Freyja's own association with the boar Gullinbursti. Freyja is said to have a husband named Od. His name is strikingly, almost identically similar to that of Odin, and it carries similar connotations, meaning frenzy, ecstasy, inspiration, poetry, or mind. This pronounced similarity has, quite naturally, led to a great deal of scholarly speculation and debate regarding Odr's true identity. Odr is primarily characterized in the myths by his mysterious and frequent, prolonged absences. He often departs from Freyja's side to embark on long and distant journeys, leaving her bereft, sorrowful, and pining for his return. During these extended periods of separation, Freyja is said to weep tears of pure red gold out of her profound sorrow and deep longing for her absent husband. Overcome by her grief, she herself wanders far and wide, traversing many lands and crossing numerous seas in a desperate search for him. During these extensive travels, she is known to take on many different names or epithets. Among these are Mardel, Sea Brighter, perhaps because her golden tears illuminate the ocean, or she brightens the lands she visits near the sea. Horn, Flaxen, or Linen, possibly referring to her radiant blonde hair, her beauty, or perhaps a connection to textile arts and weaving, which were often women's domains. Giffen, an epithet, highlighting her generosity and her role as a bestower of bounty and love. And Sia, sow, a name directly linking her to fertility, fecundity, and the life-giving earth, much like her brother Freyja's strong association with the boar as a fertility symbol. The precise relationship between Odr and Odin remains one of the most tantalizing and unresolved questions in Norse mythology. Is Od simply another name, an alternative persona, or a hypostasis, a distinct aspect or manifestation of Odin himself? The arguments for this interpretation are compelling. Both figures are known for their profound wisdom, their intrinsic connection to poetry and divine inspiration, their shared propensity for wandering far across the 9 worlds, often in disguise, and, of course, the near-identical names. If Od and Odin are indeed one and the same entity, then Freyja's marital relationship with Od would closely mirror, or perhaps even be a Vanir counterpart to Frigg's spousal relationship with Odin, with both powerful goddesses enduring the long and often unexplained absences of their powerful, restless, and knowledge-seeking husband. Alternatively, Oda could be an entirely separate, though perhaps related deity, whose individual myths and cult have largely been lost to time, leaving only these poignant fragments of his connection to Freyja. Whatever his true identity, Udra's recurring absences and Freyja's devoted search for him add a profound layer of pathos, unwavering romantic devotion, and enduring longing to her already complex character, making her not just a goddess of power and passion, but also of deep and abiding love. Freyja's worship was widespread and deeply ingrained in the religious life of Viking Age Scandinavia. While grand temples specifically dedicated solely to her are not as prominently attested as those for Odin or Thor, her importance, particularly in personal devotion, matters of love, fertility, and perhaps in women's spiritual lives, was immense. Archaeological finds such as female figurines, amulets, and certain types of jewelry are sometimes interpreted as being connected to her cult, who along with Frigg represented powerful aspects of the divine feminine. While Frigg was more associated with marriage, prophecy and motherhood within the established social order of Asgard, Freyja embodied a wilder, more autonomous feminine power, encompassing passionate love, potent magic, and even the ferocity of the battlefield. These two great goddesses, though sometimes their functions seem to overlap or are confused in some later accounts, likely represented complementary rather than contradictory aspects of the divine feminine for the Norse people. Freyja, the Lady of the Vanir, thus emerges from the rich tapestry of myth as an incredibly dynamic, influential, and multifaceted goddess. She is a deity who embodies the intoxicating passion of love and the timeless allure of beauty. She is a supreme master of the profound and arcane magical arts of seiðr. She is a formidable warrior queen who proudly claims her rightful share of fallen heroes for her celestial realm. And she is a devoted, searching wife whose golden tears speak of an enduring love. Her influence permeated Norse society, from the grand halls of chieftains to the private hopes of individuals, and she was undoubtedly one of the most widely worshipped, deeply beloved, and eternally fascinating goddesses of the North. Her stories and symbols enduring through the ages as potent expressions of feminine power, untamed desire, magical prowess, and sovereign independence. Our narrative now turns to the extraordinary figure of Kvasir and the subsequent saga of the Mead of Poetry, a substance of immense power and divine inspiration. Kvasir's very existence was a symbol of peace and combined wisdom. His origin is unique and deeply symbolic. Born from a ritual act of peacemaking. After the long and arduous Aesir-Vanir War, the two tribes of gods, the Aesir and the Vanir, sought to seal their newfound truce and ensure lasting harmony. As a solemn rite to confirm this peace, all the gods and goddesses from both sides came together. Each one, in turn, spat into a single, common vat. From this collective spittle, this mingling of divine essences from both pantheons, the gods decided to create a being, so that this symbol of their unity would not be forgotten or discarded. Thus, Kvasir was formed. Because he was created from the essence of all the gods, he was endowed with unparalleled wisdom and knowledge. Kvasir was so wise that there was no question he could not answer. He possessed a profound understanding of all things in the 9 worlds. He traveled widely throughout the lands of mortals, generously sharing his wisdom, teaching, and offering counsel to all who sought it. He was a figure of enlightenment and profound insight, a walking repository of all knowledge. His words brought clarity, and his understanding was boundless. Despite his benevolence and the great gift of his wisdom, Kvasir met a tragic and treacherous end. 2 malevolent dwarves, brothers named Fjalar and Galar, grew envious of Kvasir's immense wisdom. Or perhaps they simply coveted the power that such knowledge represented. These dwarves invited Kvasir to their dwelling under the pretense of seeking his counsel or engaging in learned discussion. Once Kvasir was alone with them and unsuspecting, Fjalar and Galar murdered him. They then callously drained all of Kvasir's blood into 3 specific vessels. 2 of these were vats named Bodn Vessel or Offer Bowl and Sun, Reconciliation or Truth. The third was a kettle or pot named Odreheria, Stir of Inspiration, Stir of Frenzy or Heart Stir. Into these 3 containers, Fjalar and Galar mixed Kvasir's blood with honey. Through some dark dwarven alchemy, or a magical process inherent in the mingling of divine blood and sweet honey, this gruesome concoction transformed. It became a sacred and incredibly potent beverage, the Mead of Poetry. Anyone who drank of this mead would instantly become a skald, or a scholar, gifted with the art of eloquence, poetic inspiration, profound wisdom, and the ability to craft beautiful and powerful verse. Kvasir's wisdom was thus preserved, albeit in this liquid form. The dwarves, Fjalar and Galar, kept the Mead of Poetry for themselves, perhaps enjoying its benefits, or simply hoarding it as a treasure. However, the wickedness of Fjalar and Galar did not end with Kvasir's murder. Sometime later, they invited a giant named Gilling and his wife to visit them. Through trickery, the dwarves caused Gilling to drown. They then callously murdered Gilling's wife by dropping a millstone on her head when she wept for her husband. When Gilling's son, the powerful Jotun Sutnoon, learned of his parents' murder at the hands of Fjalar and Galar, he was filled with immense rage and immediately sought vengeance. Sutton captured the two murderous dwarfs. He took them out to a skerry, a small rocky reef that would be completely submerged by the sea at high tide, and left them there to drown. Terrified for their lives, Fjalar and Galar pleaded with Suttungr, begging him to spare them. As Wergild a blood price or compensation for the slaying of his parents, the dwarves offered Suttungr their most precious possession, the entirety of the Mead of Poetry contained in Urdurrir, Bodin, and Sun. Suttung, perhaps valuing this unique treasure or simply seeing it as fitting recompense, agreed to the exchange. He spared the dwarves' lives and took possession of the mead. Suttungar, understanding the immense value and power of the Mead of Poetry, was determined to keep it safe and prevent it from falling into other hands, especially those of the gods. He transported the 3 vessels of mead to a formidable mountain stronghold known as Hnitbjörg, clashing rocks or colliding mountains. Deep within a chamber inside this mountain, Suttungr hid the mead. To ensure its utmost security, he assigned his own daughter, the giantess Gunnlod, to be its sole guardian. Gunnlod watched over the precious mead day and night. News of the existence of this wondrous mead of poetry and its potent ability to grant wisdom and poetic inspiration eventually reached Asgard and the ears of Odin, the Allfather. Odin, ever the relentless seeker of knowledge, wisdom, and power, became consumed with a burning desire to obtain this mead for himself and for the benefit of the gods and select mortals. He resolved to undertake a perilous quest to Jötunheimr to acquire it. For this mission, Odin traveled in disguise, adopting the name Bolverkr, which means evildoer, worker of misfortune, or bale worker. A name perhaps chosen to reflect the cunning and morally ambiguous methods he was prepared to employ. Odin, as Bolverkr, arrived in Jötunheimr and came upon 9 thralls, or farmhands, who were in the service of a giant named Baugi. Baugi was Suttungr's brother. These 9 thralls were toiling in a field, mowing hay with their scythes. Bolverkr approached them and, in a seemingly friendly gesture, offered to sharpen their dull scythes using his own magical whetstone. The thralls were astonished at how incredibly sharp their scythes became after Bolverkr had used his whetstone on them. So impressed were they that each of the 9 thralls desired to buy the wondrous whetstone from him. Bolverkr, seeing an opportunity for mischief or to achieve a specific aim, agreed to sell it, but said he only had one. He then casually tossed the whetstone high into the air. In their desperate eagerness to possess it, the thralls all lunged for the falling whetstone, and in the ensuing chaotic scramble, they tragically slew one another with their newly sharpened scythes. All 9 lay dead. This brutal event, orchestrated by Odin's cunning, conveniently removed Baugi's entire workforce. Later that day, Bolverkr sought out Baugi. The giant was lamenting the mysterious loss of all his farmhands and wondering how he would ever get his summer's harvest completed. Bolverkr offered Baugi a deal. He would single-handedly perform all the work that the 9 deceased thralls would have done for the entire summer season. In return for this monumental labor, Bolverkr asked for only one thing as payment: a single drink of Suttungr's famous Mead of Poetry. Baugi agreed to this condition, stating that he would try to help Bolverkr get the drink. However, Baugi also made it clear that he himself had no direct control over the mead, as his brother Suttungr guarded it jealously and was unlikely to share it willingly. Odin, in his guise as Bolverkr, worked tirelessly and with superhuman effort throughout the entire summer, successfully completing the labor of 9 men. When the summer was over and all the work was done, Bolverkr approached Baugi and demanded his promised payment: 1 drink of Suttungr's mead. Baugi, true to his word, went to his brother Suttungr and requested a portion of the mead for Bolverkr as payment for the summer's work. Suttungr, however, flatly and angrily refused to give up even a single drop of the precious liquid. Bolverkr, upon hearing of Suttungr's refusal, confronted Baugi. He reminded the giant of their sworn bargain and insisted that Baugi find some way to help him gain access to the mead. Odin then produced an auger, a type of drill named rati. He instructed Baugi to use rati to drill a hole through the side of the mountain Hneitbjörg into the chamber where the mead was stored. Baugi began to drill. After some time, he claimed the hole was complete. Bolverka, to test this, blew into the drilled hole. The stone dust and debris blew back into his own face, indicating that the hole did not yet go all the way through, and that Baugi was perhaps trying to deceive him, or was not drilling effectively. Angrily, Bolverka commanded Baugi to drill again, properly this time. Baugi resumed drilling with rati. When Baugi claimed it was done a second time, Bolverka blew into the hole again. This time, the dust and debris blew through to the other side, indicating the passage was clear. The moment the hole was complete, Odin swiftly transformed himself into the shape of a serpent and slithered quickly into the narrow opening. Baugi, perhaps realizing he had been tricked, or belatedly trying to stop Odin, attempted to stab the serpent with the auger as it disappeared into the hole. However, Odin was too quick and managed to evade the thrust. Inside the mountain chamber, Odin, presumably resuming a comely form, found the giantess Gunnlod faithfully guarding the 3 containers of mead: Odrore, Bodn, and Sun. Odin then used his considerable charm, eloquence, and perhaps his divine allure to woo Gunnlod. He spent 3 nights with her in the chamber. In return for these 3 nights of intimacy, or as a result of his persuasive wooing, Gunnlod agreed to grant Odin his seemingly modest request: 3 drafts of the Mead of Poetry. Odin, however, had a cunning interpretation of 3 drafts. With his first mighty draft, he completely emptied the entire contents of the great kettle, Odrur. With his second massive draft, he drained the entire vat, Bodn. And with his third and final draft, he consumed all the mead remaining in the vat, Sun. In 3 enormous swallows, Odin had ingested every last drop of the sacred mead of poetry. Having successfully consumed and thereby stolen all the mead, Odin, now filled with its potent power, transformed himself into the shape of a mighty eagle. He then burst forth from Hneitbjörg and flew with incredible speed towards Asgard, the realm of the gods. Suttunga soon discovered the theft of his precious mead and realized that Gunnlod had been complicit, or at least tricked. Enraged by this profound loss and betrayal, Suttunga also transformed himself into a giant eagle. He launched himself into the sky in furious pursuit, flying with all his might to catch Odin and reclaim the stolen treasure. The Aesir, watching from the walls of Asgard, saw Odin the eagle approaching at great speed, with the furious eagle Suttunga closing in rapidly behind him. Understanding the urgency, the gods quickly placed several large vessels and containers out in the central courtyard of Asgard. Odin, reaching Asgard just ahead of his pursuer, swooped low over these prepared vessels and carefully regurgitated the precious mead of poetry into them, thus securing it for the gods. However, Suttunga was so dangerously close behind him that Odin, in his haste and under the immense pressure of the chase, accidentally let some small amount of the mead spill out from his rear end as he flew. This small, less pure, and ignominiously expelled portion of the mead became known as the Skaldfiflahur, the poetister's share, rhymester's portion, or bad poet's lot. It is said that this is the source of inspiration for all bad or mediocre poets and untalented versifiers. The pure and potent mead of poetry, which Odin had carefully regurgitated into the vessels, was thereafter kept by him. He would dispense it sparingly, granting sips only to true and worthy poets, to wise individuals, and sometimes to gods who sought its divine inspiration, ensuring that the gift of sublime poetry and profound wisdom remained a rare and precious boon. Thus, through cunning, deception, seduction, and daring, Odin secured the Mead of Poetry, born from Kvasir's blood for the benefit of gods and favored mortals, forever linking poetic inspiration to divine power. We now venture into the often turbulent and formidable world of the Jötnar, commonly translated as giants, though devourers or eaters might also capture an aspect of their primal nature. These beings are fundamental to the Norse cosmos, existing as ancient, powerful entities who predate many of the gods and embody the raw, untamed forces of nature and the cosmos. The Jötnar are not a monolithic group of purely evil beings, as later interpretations might suggest. Their relationship with the Aesir and Vanir gods is complex and deeply ambivalent. They are frequently antagonists, adversaries, and sources of chaos and threat to the divine and human worlds. Yet they are also kinsfolk to the gods. Many prominent deities, including Odin himself, have gods and Jötnar intermarry, form alliances, and sometimes even share wisdom. The very first of all beings was the primordial giant Ymir, also known as Aurugamir. He was formed from the melting ice of Niflheimr, where it met the fiery heat of Muspelheimr in the void of Ginnungagap. From Ymir's armpits, a male and female Jotun were born, and his legs begat a six-headed son, thus becoming the progenitor of the entire race of frost giants, or Hrimthasar. When Odin and his brothers Vili and Ve slew Ymir, an immense flood of his blood drowned all the frost giants save for one, Bergelmir, and his wife. They escaped on a ludra, possibly a hollowed log, coffin, or ark-like vessel, and from them all subsequent generations of Jötnar are descended. The gods then fashioned the cosmos from Ymir's corpse. His flesh became the earth, his blood the oceans, his bones the mountains, his teeth the rocks, his skull the sky, and his brains the clouds. The primary realm of the Jötnar is Jötunheimr, the world of giants. It is generally depicted as a vast, rugged, and often inhospitable land, typically located to the east or north of Midgard, the world of humans. Jötunheimr is characterized by towering mountains, dark forests, frozen wastes, and mighty rivers. It is a place of immense natural power, often chaotic and dangerous for those not native to it. Within Jötunheimr lie specific strongholds and halls of powerful giant lords, such as Utgardr, the fortress of Utgardr-Loki, and Gimisgardr, the courts of the giant Gimir. Now let us explore some of the most significant named Jötnar and their stories. Freyr, Thrymna, whose name means noisy or uproar, was a king of the Jötnar. His tale is famously recounted in the Eddic poem Thrymskvida. One morning, Thor awoke to find his mighty hammer Mjolnir missing. Loki flew to Jötunheimr using Freyja's falcon-cloak and learned from Freyja that the giant had stolen the hammer. Freyja declared he would only return Mjolnir if the beautiful goddess Freyja was given to him as his bride. Freyja, understandably, was furious and utterly refused. The gods held a council, and Heimdallr proposed a cunning plan. Thor himself should be dressed as Freyja, complete with bridal veil and the necklace Brísingamen, and go to Jötunheimr. Though Thor initially protested vehemently against such an unmanly disguise, Loki persuaded him it was the only way to retrieve the hammer. Loki accompanied Thor disguised as Freyja's handmaiden. At the wedding feast in Thrym's hall, Freyja astonished the giants by consuming an entire ox, 8 salmon, and all the dainties intended for the women, washing it down with 3 casks of mead. Loki cleverly explained this prodigious appetite by saying Freyja had fasted for 8 nights in her eagerness to come to Jötunheimr. When Thrymr lifted the veil to kiss his bride, he recoiled in shock from Thor's burning eyes. Again, Loki explained that Freyja's eyes were so fierce because she had not slept for 8 nights due to her excitement. Finally, to consecrate the marriage, Thrymr called for Mjolnir to be brought and laid in the bride's lap. Once the hammer was within his grasp, Thor threw off his disguise, seized Mjolnir, and slew Thrymr and all his giant kin present at the feast, reclaiming his weapon and ending the threat. Hrungnir was renowned as the strongest of the Jötnar, possessing a heart and head made of hard stone. His story involves a wager with Odin and a fatal duel with Thor. Odin, riding Sleipnir, raced Hrungnir, whose horse, Galtaxi, Golden Mane, was also incredibly swift. Odin won the race, but Hrungnir in his pursuit rode all the way into Asgard. The gods, adhering to rules of hospitality, invited Hrungnir in for a drink. The giant became drunk and boastful, threatening to destroy Asgard, kill all the gods except Freyja and Sif, whom he claimed he would take for himself, and drink all their ale. The gods, tired of his insolence, called upon Thor to deal with him. Thor challenged Hrungnir to a formal duel at Grjotnagardr, stone fence, Sankort. Hrungnir armed himself with a massive stone shield and a whetstone as his weapon. The Jötnar, fearing for Hrungnir against Thor, created a huge clay giant named Mokkurkarv, Mistkali, to aid him, though it had the heart of a mare and proved cowardly. As Thor approached, his servant Thjalfi tricked Hrungnir by telling him Thor would attack from beneath the ground. Hrungnir therefore placed his shield beneath his feet, leaving his stone head exposed. Thor hurled Mjolnir, which shattered Hrungnir's whetstone in mid-air. The hammer then struck Hrungnir's stone head, smashing it to pieces and killing him. A fragment of the shattered whetstone, however, lodged itself deep in Thor's own forehead. Thor, in turn, had killed Mokkurkarv. After the duel, Hrungnir's massive leg fell across the victorious Thor, trapping him. None of the Aesir could lift it until Thor's young son Magni, only 3 nights old, arrived and easily freed his father, chiding him for his weakness. The sorceress Groa attempted to chant the whetstone fragment out of Thor's head, but Thor, in his eagerness to share good news about her missing husband, Organdil, distracted her and the spell was left unfinished. Thus the stone remained in Thor's head for the rest of his life. Garudro was a cruel Jotun who had a particular enmity for Thor. Odin, in disguise as Grimnir, once visited Geirrodro's hall. Geirrodro, suspicious and inhospitable, had Grimnir bound and tortured between 2 fires for 8 nights. Geirrodro's young son, Agnar, showed kindness to Grimnir by giving him a drink. Eventually, Odin revealed himself, and Geirrodro, realizing his grave error, rushed forward but tripped and fell upon his own sword, perishing. Later, Loki, while flying in Freyja's falcon-cloak, was captured by Geirrodr. The giant imprisoned Loki and starved him until Loki agreed to lure Thor to Geirrodr's hall without his hammer, Mjolnir, his belt of strength, Njörðr, or his iron gloves, Jaringreipar. Thor, trusting Loki, set out. On the way, he stayed with the kindly giantess Gridar. Gridar was aware of Geirrod's treachery and warned Thor. She then lent Thor her own powerful magical items: a belt of strength, a pair of iron gloves, and her unbreakable staff, Gridar Vuller. Thus equipped, Thor arrived at Gjordra's domain. He first had to cross the raging river, Vimur. One of Gjordra's daughters, Gialp, was causing the river to swell by urinating into it from upstream. Thor threw a great stone at her, saying a river should be dammed at its source, and managed to wade across, pulling himself up by a rowan tree, hence the saying, "Rowan is Thor's salvation." On reaching Guerrero's hall, Thor was offered a seat. As he sat, he felt the chair rising beneath him, intending to crush him against the roof beams. Thor thrust Guerrero's staff against the rafters and pushed down with all his might, breaking the backs of Guerrero's 2 daughters, Gialp and Grip, who had been under the chair lifting it. Geirrod then entered the hall and, using a pair of tongs, seized a red-hot lump of molten iron from the forge and hurled it at Thor. Thor, using Griddar's iron gloves, deftly caught the burning projectile in mid-air. Geirrod, terrified, tried to hide behind an iron pillar. Thor, with all his divine strength, threw the molten iron with such force that it smashed through the pillar, through Geirrida, and through the wall of the hall, burying itself in the earth outside, killing the treacherous giant. But Skadi, whose name may mean harm or shadow, is a powerful Jötun, a goddess of winter, skiing, hunting, and mountains. She is the daughter of the Jötun Thiazi. After the gods killed her father Thiazi, who had abducted the goddess Idun and her apples of youth, Skadi armed herself and journeyed to Asgard, demanding vengeance and compensation. The gods, wishing to avoid further conflict, offered Skadi reconciliation. First, Odin took Thjazi's eyes and cast them into the heavens, where they became 2 stars. Second, they offered her a husband from among the gods, but with a condition. She had to choose her husband by looking only at their feet. Skadi, hoping to choose the beautiful Balder, selected the pair of feet she thought were most comely. However, these feet belonged to the sea god Njörðr. Their marriage was not a happy one. Skadi loved her ancestral home in the high, snowy mountains of Thrymr, while Njörðr loved his home, Noatun, by the sea. They tried to compromise, agreeing to spend 9 nights in Thrymheimr and then 9 nights in Noatun. But Njörðr found the howling of wolves in the mountains unbearable, and Skadi disliked the crying of seabirds and the sounds of the ocean. They eventually separated. Skadi is later mentioned as possibly marrying Odin and bearing him sons, and also as being a companion of Ulu. She is a fierce and independent figure, embodying the wildness of the northern landscapes. At Ragnarok, she is prophesied to survive. Gerðr, daughter of the Jötunheimr and the giantess Orboda, is renowned for her dazzling beauty. As we explored in Freyja's section, Freyja saw her from Odin's high seat, Helidskjalf, and was instantly overcome with love sickness. Her arms shone so brightly they illuminated sky and sea. Freyja sent his servant Skirnir to Jötunheimr to woo Gerðr on his behalf, giving Skirnir's magical horse and his self-fighting sword. Skirnir first offered Gerðr golden apples, and then the ring Draupnir, both of which she proudly refused. Only when Skirnir threatened her with powerful magical curses, detailing a life of misery, torment, and unnatural desires, did Gerðr finally relent. She agreed to meet Freyr in a grove called Bari after 9 nights. The coercive nature of this wooing from a Jotun perspective highlights the often forceful ways the gods achieved their desires when interacting with giants. Gerðr eventually married Freyr and was considered a goddess by marriage, mother of Fjolnir. Angrboda, whose name means she who brings grief or herald of sorrow, was a powerful Jotun and a significant figure in the prophecies surrounding Ragnarok. She dwelt in Jarnvidra, the Iron Wood, a desolate forest in Jötunheimr. Angrboda had a fateful union with the god Loki. From this relationship, she bore 3 monstrous and formidable offspring, each destined to play a crucial role in the downfall of the gods. First was the great wolf Fenrir, who would ultimately slay Odin at Ragnarok. Second was the world serpent, Jormungandr, who encircles Midgard and is Thor's ultimate adversary. Third was Hel, the half-dead, half-living queen of the eponymous realm of the dead Niflheimr. Angrboda's role as the mother of these beings marks her as a progenitor of some of the most significant forces of chaos and destruction that the gods would face. She embodies a dark, chthonic, and fateful aspect of the Jotun race. Gunnlod, daughter of the Jotun Sutun, was entrusted with guarding the precious Mead of Poetry within the mountain Heithbjörg. As detailed in the story of Kvasir and the Mead, Odin, in his guise as Bolverk, managed to enter her chamber. Odin spent 3 nights with Gunnlod, and in return she agreed to let him take 3 sips of the mead. Odin, with his cunning, consumed all the mead in those 3 draughts. Gunnlod was thus instrumental, albeit perhaps unwittingly or through seduction, in Odin's acquisition of the mead. Her story illustrates the theme of Jotun women being guardians of treasures or wisdom that are then obtained by the gods, often through trickery or romance. Sutun, son of the giant Gilling, became the possessor of the Mead of Poetry after avenging his parents' murder by the dwarves Fjalar and Galar. He took the mead as Wergild from the dwarves. Sutun Grub hid the mead in the mountain Heimbjörg and set his daughter Gunnlod to guard it. He fiercely protected it, refusing to share even a drop when his brother Baugi, at Odin's instigation, asked for some. When Odin, as Bolverkrash, stole the mead, Sutun Grub transformed into an eagle and pursued Odin relentlessly to Asgard, nearly catching him. Sturngrid represents the Jotun as a powerful guardian of immense treasures, jealous of their possessions and hostile to any attempts by the gods to acquire them. Vafthrûdnir and Vafthrûdnism. Vafthrûdnir was an ancient and immensely wise Jotun, renowned for his vast knowledge of cosmology, history, and the fates of gods and giants. His story is primarily told in the Eddic poem Vafthrûdnismal, the Lay of Vafthrûdnir, which details a perilous wisdom contest between the giant and Odin. Odin, always seeking more knowledge, decided to visit Vafthrûdnir's hall, despite Frigg's warnings that the giant was incredibly powerful and cunning. Odin travelled in disguise, calling himself Gag Radrad, Victory Counsel, or Gainer of Advice. Upon arriving, Gungrother challenged Vafthrûdnir to a contest of wisdom, with the loser forfeiting their head. Vafthrûdnir, confident in his knowledge, accepted. The poem then unfolds as a series of questions and answers, revealing profound lore. Avridrada, Odin first asks Vafthrûdnir about the origins of the cosmos, the horse that draws day, Skinfaxi with its shining mane, the horse that draws night, Hrimfaxi, Frostmane, from whose bit dew falls, the river that divides Jötunheimr from Asgard, Ifingr, which never freezes over, and the field where Surt and the sweet gods will meet, at Ragnarok, Vigrid, 100 leagues in every direction. Vafthrûdnir answers all these correctly, establishing his deep cosmological knowledge. Vafthrûdnir then turns the questioning on Gagradr, testing Odin's own wisdom about the origins of the earth and sky, from Ymir's body, the moon and sun, Mani and Sol, children of Mundilferi, pursued by wolves, Skoll and Hati, the father of winter and summer, and the oldest of Aesir or Ymir's kin, Bergelmir. Odin answers these correctly. The contest intensifies. Odin asks about the origin of giants, from Ymir, how Ymir procreated, from his armpits and feet, and what Vafthrûdnir first remembers, Bergelmir being laid on the lute. Odin then delves into the future and the events of Ragnarok. What humans will survive the Fimbul Vetra, life and Lifdrasir, hidden in Hodmimi's Holt, sustained by morning dew, the fate of the sun before Fenrir swallows it. Sol will bear a daughter as fair as herself to continue the cycle. The identity of the wolves pursuing the sun and moon. He asks about the Norns, 3 mighty maidens from Jötunheimr who shape destinies. The Einherjar in Valhalla, Odin's chosen warriors who feast and fight, and the fate of Odin himself at Ragnarok, to be slain by Fenrir. Odin continues, asking who will avenge him, his son Vidar, who will tear Fenrir's jaws apart. And what will happen to Thor? He will slay Jormungand but die from its venom. He asks about the new world that will arise from the sea after Ragnarok, green and fertile, and which gods will survive and inhabit it. Vidar and Vali, Moddi and Magni with Mjolnir, and Balder and Hodr returning from hell. Finally, Odin asks his ultimate, unanswerable question, the one that reveals his true identity. What did Odin whisper in the ear of his son Balder before Balder was placed on the funeral pyre? Only Odin himself could know the answer to this. Vafthrûdnir, realizing he has been outwitted by Odin in disguise, acknowledges his defeat. No one knows what you said in ancient times in your son's ear, he declares. With the fated mouth I have spoken my ancient lore, and of the doom of the gods. I have contended in wisdom with Odin himself. You will always be the wisest of beings. With this, Odin wins the contest, having gained immense knowledge and affirmed his supreme wisdom, while Vafthrûdnir presumably forfeits his head, though the poem doesn't explicitly state this final act. Vafthrûdnism is a treasure trove of Norse cosmology and eschatology, framed within this dramatic intellectual duel. Hymir was a Jotun primarily known for his role in Thor's famous fishing expedition to catch the world serpent, Jormungand, as told in the poem Hymiskvida and by Snorri Sturluson. The gods wished to hold a feast, but Aegir lacked a cauldron large enough to brew ale for all of them. Tyr suggested that his Areard, Hymir, possessed such a massive kettle. Thor and Tyr journeyed to Hymir's hall. Hymir was initially gruff and inhospitable. Hymir's wife, or mother, a 900-headed giantess, hid Thor and Tyr. Hymir, upon seeing Thor, was displeased by the presence of the giant killer. The next day, Thor offered to go fishing with Hymir to provide food. Hymir, contemptuous of Thor's youth, told him to find his own bait. Thor struck off the head of Hymir's largest ox, Himinriacho, Heaven Bellower, to use as bait. They rowed far out to sea. Thor rowed much further than Hymir was comfortable with, into the deep waters where Jormungandr lay. Thor baited his massive hook with the ox head and cast his line. Jormungandr took the bait. Thor pulled with all his divine strength, his feet crashing through the bottom of the boat and bracing against the seabed. The struggle was so immense that the world itself shook. Thor managed to pull Jormungandr's head above the waves, and the two great adversaries stared at each other with venomous hatred. Thor raised Mjolnir to strike the serpent. At that critical moment, the terrified Hymir, fearing the boat would sink or that the serpent would flood the world, cut Thor's fishing line. Jormungandr sank back into the depths, and Thor, enraged at being denied his kill, struck Hymir a blow. Some say he threw him overboard. Before this fishing trip, while at Hymir's hall, Thor also demonstrated his strength by breaking Hymir's supposedly unbreakable magical goblet. Hymir had challenged Thor to break it. After several failed attempts, Tyr's mother advised Thor to smash it against Hymir's own incredibly hard head. Thor did so, and the goblet shattered, while Hymir's head remained intact. Thor and Tyr then took Hymir's enormous cauldron and departed. Hymir and a host of other giants pursued them, but Thor slew them all with Mjolnir. Aegir, also known as Hleyr, was a Jotun of the sea, often considered a personification of the ocean's power. Despite being a giant, he had a generally amicable relationship with the Aesir, and frequently hosted them for grand feasts in his magnificent hall beneath the waves near the island of Helisi. He was famed for his brewing skills and possessed a giant cauldron, later identified as the one Thor took from Hymir, to make ale for the god. Aegir was married to his sister Ran, whose name means robber or plunderer. Ran was a more sinister figure, the goddess of the drowned. She possessed a great net with which she would drag sailors down to her watery domain, claiming them and their possessions. To be drowned at sea was to go to Ran. Sailors would sometimes carry gold on them, hoping to appease Ran if they were shipwrecked. Aegir and Ran had 9 daughters, who were personifications of the waves. Their names are poetic and descriptive, such as Blödugadda, Bloody Hair, Bjurga, Billow, Pitchin, Lichin 1, Hefringleiðr, Living Wave, Hemming Levoav, Heaven Bright, Holden, Lungwever, Folka, Cooling Wave, Unfleck, Foam Fleck. These wave maidens are sometimes depicted as beautiful but also dangerous and capricious, like the sea itself. Ymir. Reiteration for context. As mentioned, Ymir was the primordial being from whose body the world was made. He is the ultimate ancestor of all Jötnar. His existence and subsequent dismemberment by Odin, Vili, and Vi form the very foundation of Norse cosmogony. The frost giants are his direct descendants, Thiazi. Thiazi was the father of Skadi, a powerful Jotun who could transform into an eagle. His most famous myth involved the abduction of the goddess Idun and her apples of youth. Loki was once captured by Thiazi in eagle form. To secure his release, Loki promised to lure Idun out of Asgard. Loki tricked Idun into leaving Asgard with her apples, claiming he had found other apples even more wondrous. Thiazi, again in eagle form, swooped down and carried Idun and her apples off to his stronghold, Thrymheim. Without Idun's apples, the gods began to age and wither. They threatened Loki until he agreed to rescue Idun. Borrowing Freyja's falcon-cloak, Loki flew to Thrymheimr, transformed Idun into a nut, or a swallow in some versions, and flew back towards Asgard with her in his talons. Jazi, discovering Idun's absence, transformed into an eagle and pursued Loki. As Loki and Idun reached Asgard, the gods lit a great fire along the walls. Loki, as a falcon, flew just over it. Thasi, flying too close in pursuit, had his eagle feathers catch fire, causing him to fall to the ground within Asgard's walls, where the gods promptly slew him. Skadi's subsequent arrival in Asgard was to seek vengeance for this act. Besla was a Jotun, daughter of the giant Bolthorn. She was the wife of Bor, son of Buri, the first god, and, significantly, the mother of Odin, Vili, and Ve. This means that the chief god of the Aesir, Odin, was himself half Jotun by blood, highlighting the deep and often overlooked kinship between the gods and giants. Laufey, or now Laufey, also referred to as Nal, needle, perhaps due to her slender form, was a Jotun, or possibly an Asinja, goddess. She was the mother of Loki, with the Jota, Farbauta, being his father. Loki's Jotun parentage on both sides is often cited to explain his ambiguous nature, his chaotic tendencies, and his eventual siding against the Aesir at Ragnarok. Farbolbi, whose name means cruel striker or dangerous striker, was a Jotun and the father of Loki with Laufey/Nau. His name might allude to lightning striking a tree, Laufey, Leafy Joe, or Tree Island, to produce fire, Loki often being associated with fire and cunning. Mimir, whose name means the rememberer or the wise one, is a complex figure, often associated with the Jötnar due to his immense ancient wisdom. After the Aesir-Vanir War, Mimir was sent to the Vanir as a hostage along with Honir. The Vanir, feeling cheated when Honir proved indecisive without Mimir's counsel, beheaded Mimir and sent his head back to Odin. Odin, using herbs and charms, preserved Mimir's head, which continued to speak and offer him wisdom and counsel from otherwise inaccessible sources. Mimir also guarded Mimir's Brunra, Mimir's well, a well of profound wisdom located beneath one of the roots of the world tree, Yggdrasil, in Jötunheimr. Odin famously sacrificed one of his own eyes to Mimir in exchange for a drink from this well, gaining unparalleled insight. Mimir is said to drink from the well daily using the Gjallarhorn, though this horn is more famously associated with Heimdallr. Eirikyn was a powerful Jotun renowned for her immense physical strength. She played a crucial role in the funeral of Balder. After Balder's death, the gods wished to launch his great ship, Hrinhorni, to serve as his funeral pyre, but it was too heavy for even them to move. They sent to Jötunheimr for Eirikyn. She arrived riding a giant wolf, using venomous snakes as reins. When she dismounted, Odin ordered 4 berserkers to look after her wolf, but they were unable to control it without first knocking it unconscious. Eirikyn then approached Balder's ship and, with a single mighty push, launched it into the sea with such force that fire flashed from the rollers beneath it, and the entire earth trembled. Thor, angered by her display of strength, or her somewhat contemptuous manner, was about to smash her skull with Mjolnir, but the other gods persuaded him to spare her. Modgudr, Furious Bowl, is Courageous Bowl, is a Gachunan who guards the bridge, Gila Resounding Bridge, which spans the river Gjall, Resounding, on the road to Hell, the realm of the dead. When Hermod rode to Hell to try and retrieve Balder, he encountered Modgudr. She challenged him, asking his name and business, noting that the bridge thundered more beneath him alone than when 5 troops of dead men had recently passed. She confirmed that Balder had indeed crossed the bridge and directed Hermod on the downward and northward path to Hell's gates, the Muspeli, sons of Muspel and Surt. While Surt is the primary figure from Muspelheimr, the land of fire, his followers are sometimes referred to as the sons of Muspel or the Muspili. These are the fire giants, or fire demons, who will ride forth with Surt at Ragnarok. They will advance across Bifrost Bridge, causing it to break and bring conflagration to the world. Surt himself is a colossal Jötun, wielding a flaming sword that shines brighter than the sun. He is destined to slay the god Freyja, who will be weaponless, and to set the world ablaze, consuming it in fire at the end of the final battle. Loki, whose name means flame or wildfire, was a Jötun encountered by Thor and Loki during their visit to the hall of the giant king Utgarda-Loki. In a series of contests designed to humiliate the gods, Loki boasted of his eating prowess. Utgarda-Loki pitted him against Loki in an eating contest. A long trough filled with meat was set before them. Loki ate his way through the meat at great speed, leaving only the bone. Loki, however, not only ate all the meat, but also consumed the bones and the wooden trough itself. It was later revealed by Utgarda-Loki that Loki was actually wildfire, personified, which, naturally, consumes everything in its path. Utgarda-Loki. Utgarda-Loki, Loki of the Outyards, or Loki of the Outer Enclosures, also known as Skrymir, big-looking fellow, or Boaster, was a giant king and a master of illusion who resided in the fortress of Utgardgir in Jötunheimr. His tale is one of the most elaborate and entertaining, involving Thor. Thor, Loki, Thjalfi, and Röskva journeyed to Jötunheimr. They first encountered a massive giant sleeping in a forest who introduced himself as Skrymir. Skrymir offered to carry their provisions in his bag, but he tied it so tightly that the gods could not open it. Thor, frustrated, struck Skrymir on the head 3 times with Mjolnir while the giant slept. Each time, Skrymir merely awoke, asking if a leaf or an acorn had fallen on him. They eventually arrived at Utgarda, the vast fortress of Utgarda-Loki. The king, feigning disdain for their small stature, challenged them to a series of contests. Loki, as mentioned, competed in an eating contest against Logi, Wildfire, and lost. Thjalfi, renowned for his speed, raced against a youth named Hugi, Thought. Thjalfi lost 3 times, with Hugi being far swifter. Thor then undertook 3 challenges. First, he attempted to empty a large drinking horn in 3 draughts. Despite drinking immense amounts, the level of the liquid barely seemed to drop. Second, Utgarda-Loki challenged Thor to lift the king's large grey cat from the floor. Thor, despite all his strength, could only manage to lift one of the cat's paws. Third, Thor was challenged to wrestle an old woman, Utgarda-Loki's nurse named Ellie, Old Age. Thor struggled mightily but was eventually forced down onto one knee. The next morning, as the gods departed, Utgarda-Loki escorted them out and revealed the deceptions. Skrymir had been Utgarda-Loki himself, and he had placed a mountain between himself and Thor's hammer blows, which was why Thor's strikes had no effect, and had in fact created 3 deep valleys. Loki was wildfire, Hugi was thought, which is faster than any runner. The drinking horn Thor had tried to empty had its other end connected to the ocean itself. Thor's mighty draughts had actually lowered the sea level, creating tides. The cat Thor had tried to lift was, in fact, Jormungandr, the world serpent stretched around the earth. It was a marvel Thor had managed to lift it at all, and Ellie, the old woman Thor wrestled, was old age personified, whom no one can ultimately defeat. Upon revealing these illusions, Utgarda-Loki and his fortress vanished, leaving the gods astonished at the scale of the deception. This story showcases the Jötnar not just as brutes, but as masters of magic and cunning, capable of outwitting even the mightiest gods through illusion. Bergelmir. Reiteration for context. Bergelmir, son of Thrudgelmir and grandson of Ymir, was the only frost giant, along with his unnamed wife, to survive the deluge of Ymir's blood when Odin and his brothers slew the primordial giant. They escaped on a lud. From Bergelmir and his wife, all the subsequent races of Jötnar are descended, making him a crucial ancestral figure for their kind, a parallel to Noah in some respects. The Jötnar, in their myriad forms, from wise counselors and beautiful maidens to terrifying monsters and primal forces, are indispensable to the fabric of Norse mythology. They represent the other, the untamed, the ancient powers against which the gods define themselves, but also from which they draw ancestry, wisdom, and often their greatest challenges and most profound stories. We now delve into the shadowy, subterranean world of the Dvergar, commonly known as dwarves. They are also sometimes referred to as Svartalfar or Black Elves, though the precise relationship and distinction between Dvergar and Svartalfar can be ambiguous in the sources, often seeming to describe the same type of being. The Dvergar are master craftsmen, smiths and artisans of unparalleled skill, responsible for creating many of the most famous and powerful treasures and artifacts in Norse mythology. They are intrinsically linked to the earth, to mountains, rocks, and precious metals. According to Snorri Sturluson in the Prose Edda, the Dvergar originated in a rather humble, almost primordial manner. They were said to have first quickened like maggots within the flesh of the slain primordial giant Ymir, after the gods had fashioned the earth from his body. Later, by the decree of the gods, these beings were endowed with human understanding and the appearance of men, though they typically dwelt beneath the earth and in rocks. The Völuspá also lists many dwarf names, suggesting their early and significant presence in the mythological cosmos, with Motsognir and Durin being named as the most powerful or original amongst them. The primary realm of the Dvergar is known as Nidavellir, dark fields, downward fields, or fields of darkness, or Svartalfheim, world of the Black Elves. As these names suggest, it is a subterranean world located deep beneath the surface of the earth. Svartalfheim is often depicted as a realm of caves, tunnels, and underground forges, rich in precious metals like gold and silver and an abundance of gemstones. It is here, in their hidden smithies, that the Dvergar tirelessly work their incredible magic with metal and stone, illuminated by the fires of their forges. The Dvergar are generally portrayed as being short in stature, often stout, and sometimes misshapen or aged in appearance. They are typically wise in the ways of the earth and its secrets, exceptionally skilled in all forms of smithing, mining, and jewelcraft, but can also be greedy, jealous, cunning, and sometimes treacherous. They value their creations highly and do not part with them easily. Now let us explore the creation of the most significant artifacts forged by the Dvergar and the stories of key named dwarves. The most famous tale of dwarven craftsmanship involves a contest instigated by the mischief of Loki. Loki, for his own amusement or malice, had cut off all of Sif's, Thor's wife, beautiful golden hair. Thor, enraged, threatened to break every bone in Loki's body unless he found a way to replace Sif's hair with something equally or more wondrous. Loki, fearing Thor's wrath, went down to Svartalfheim and approached a group of renowned dwarven smiths known as the Sons of Ivaldi. He commissioned them to create 3 magnificent treasures. First, they fashioned new hair of pure gold for Sif. This golden hair was so finely wrought that it would magically attach itself to Sif's head and grow, just like natural hair. Second, they built the incredible ship Skíðbladnir for Freyja. This ship was large enough to hold all the Aesir, yet it could be folded up like cloth to fit in one's pocket, and it always had a fair wind when its sail was hoisted. Third, they forged the deadly spear Gungnir for Odin. This spear was perfectly balanced and enchanted so that it would never miss its mark and could not be stopped in its flight. Loki was so pleased with these creations that he boasted that no dwarfs could match the skill of the Sons of Ivaldi. This boast reached the ears of another pair of highly skilled dwarf brothers, Brokra and his brother Sindri, also known as Eitri. Brokra, incensed by Loki's claim, wagered his own head against Loki's head that his brother Sindri could create 3 treasures even more magnificent than those made by the Sons of Ivaldi. Loki, ever confident and eager for a wager, accepted. Sindri then set to work in his forge, with Brokra diligently working the bellows. For the first treasure, Sindri placed a pig's skin in the forge and instructed Brokra to pump the bellows continuously, without any interruption, or the work would be spoilt. As Brokra worked, Loki, transformed into a fly, landed on Brokra's hand and bit him sharply. Brokra, however, endured the pain and continued to pump without pause. Sindri drew from the forge a magnificent golden boar, Gullinbursti. golden bristles. Its bristles shone in the dark, and it could run faster than any horse through air and over water. This was for Freyr. For the second treasure, Sindri placed gold in the forge and again instructed Brokkr to pump the bellows without interruption. Loki, still as a fly, now bit Brokkr on the neck, twice as painfully as before. Yet Brokkr persevered. Sindri then drew from the forge the wondrous golden ring Draupnir. The dripper, every 9th night, 8 new gold rings of equal weight and beauty would drip from Draupnir. This was for Odin. For the third and final treasure, Sindri placed iron in the forge and gave Brokkr the same stern instruction to pump without stopping, warning that this was the most crucial work. Loki, as a fly, now landed between Brokkr's eyes and bit his eyelids so severely that blood streamed down, blinding Brokkr. For a brief moment, Brokkr, unable to see, lifted his hand to swat the fly away, momentarily ceasing his work on the bellows. Sindri then drew from the forge the mighty hammer Mjolnir. It was a weapon of immense power which would always return to its thrower's hand and could never be broken. However, due to Brokkr's momentary interruption, the handle of Mjolnir was slightly too short. This hammer was for Thor. The Aesir were assembled to judge the contest. Loki presented the treasures from the sons of Ivaldi, Sif's golden hair, Freyr's ship Skíðbladnir, and Odin's spear Gungnir. Then Brokkr presented Sindri's creations, Freyja's boar Gullinbursti, Odin's ring Draupnir, and Thor's hammer. The gods unanimously declared that Mjolnir was the greatest of all the treasures, despite its short handle, because it would be their primary defense against the Jötnar. Thus Brokkr and Sindri won the wager. Loki, having lost the wager, tried to flee, but Thor caught him. When Brokkr prepared to take Loki's head, as per their agreement, Loki cleverly argued that Brokkr had a claim to his head, but not to any part of his neck. Unable to take the head without cutting the neck, Brokkr was thwarted. However, to punish Loki for his trickery and his painful bites, Brokkr, with Thor's permission, used an awl to sew Loki's lips shut, silencing his boastful and deceitful tongue. At least for a time. Another significant artifact created by dwarves, though the specific smiths are less consistently named in this context, is the famous necklace Brísingamen, primarily associated with the goddess Freyja. As detailed in Freyja's section, she acquired this magnificent necklace from 4 dwarves, Álfrig, Dvalin, Berlin, and Gerðr, by agreeing to spend one night with each of them. This necklace was a marvel of craftsmanship, enhancing Freyja's beauty and becoming one of her most prized possessions. The dwarves here demonstrate their desire for something other than gold or silver, using their creation to bargain for Freyja's favors. The dwarves Fjalar and Galar play a more sinister role. As recounted in the story of Kvasir and the Mead of Poetry, these 2 dwarves murdered the wise being Kvasir. They then drained his blood into 3 vessels, Odrir, Bodn, and Sun, and mixed it with honey, thereby creating the sacred Mead of Poetry, which granted poetic inspiration and wisdom to anyone who drank it. Fjalar and Galar later murdered the giant Gilling and his wife, and were forced to give the Mead of Poetry to Gilling's son Sutun, as Wörgild to save their own lives. These dwarves exemplify the darker, more treacherous side of their race. The dwarf Alvis, whose name means all-wise, is the central figure in the Eddic poem Alvismal. The Lay of Alvis, or the Sayings of All-Wise, this poem details a contest of wisdom between Alvis and the god Thor. Alvis had come to Asgard to claim Thor's daughter Thrudra as his bride. She had apparently been promised to him at some earlier, unspecified time. Thor was away when Alvis arrived, but upon his return, he was deeply displeased by the prospect of his daughter marrying a dwarf. Thor, known more for his strength than his cunning, devised a plan to prevent the marriage without resorting to outright violence against a suitor who had a claim. He told Alvis that he would consent to the marriage only if the dwarf could prove his immense wisdom by answering every question Thor put to him about the names of various things in all the different worlds. Among humans, gods, Vanir, giants, elves, and in hell. Alvis, proud of his knowledge and eager to claim his bride, readily agreed to the challenge. Thor then proceeded to question Elves throughout the entire night. The questions covered a vast range of cosmological and natural phenomena. Thor asked what Earth is called in each world, what heaven is called, the moon, the sun, clouds, wind, calm, sea and fire. He also asked about wood or forest, night, seed or grain, and ale. To each question, Alfis provided a comprehensive list of names or kennings used by each race of beings, showcasing his profound and encyclopedic knowledge. For example, he states that Earth is called Earth by men, the fold by the Aesir, the ways by the Vanir, evergreen by Jötnar, the grower by Álfar, and clay by the high powers in hell. His answers reveal a rich tapestry of poetic synonyms and perceptions of the world from different mythological perspectives. Thor continued his questioning relentlessly, prolonging the contest. Alvis, engrossed in demonstrating his wisdom, failed to notice the passage of time. As Elvis finished his final answer, the first rays of the morning sun streamed into the hall. Thor then revealed his true purpose. In one breast I have never found more ancient lore. With great deceit I tell you, you have been tricked. You are dawned on, dwarf. Now the sun shines in the hall. Dwarves, according to some traditions, were unable to withstand sunlight and would turn to stone if exposed to it. Thus, Alvis, caught by the dawn, was petrified, and Thor successfully prevented the marriage of his daughter through cunning rather than force, using the dwarf's own pride in his wisdom against him. Alvasmal is a valuable source for poetic vocabulary and demonstrates the high regard for, and potential vulnerability of dwarven knowledge. Other named dwarves appear in lists, particularly in the Voluspa, such as Dvalin, who also appears as one of the makers of Brísingamen and is associated with runes, Din, Dunir, Durathror, these latter three sometimes associated with stags on Yggdrasil, and many others like Filli, Kili, Fundin, Nali, Heptafili, Hana, Svea, Billingrin, Bruni, Bilda, Buri, Fra, Hornbori, Frari, Buri, Fra, Hornbori, Frari, Buri, Fra, Hornbori, Frari, Free, Fra. While individual stories for all of them are not extant, their names populate the mythological landscape, suggesting a large and diverse race. The Dvergar, therefore, are far more than just background figures. They are the master enablers of the gods, providing them with their most iconic tools and weapons. Their skills are essential to the functioning of the cosmos, as depicted in the myths. Yet, they also possess their own agency, their own desires, and sometimes their own malevolence, making them a complex and indispensable part of the Norse mythological world, dwelling in their dark, glittering realm of Nidavellir, forever shaping metal and destiny. We now turn our attention to the Álfar, or Elves, a race of beings in Norse mythology often associated with beauty, magic, and nature, though their precise nature and categorization can be somewhat enigmatic. The most prominent distinction made, primarily by Snorri Sturluson in the Prose Edda, is between two main types of elves, the Ljósálfar, light elves, and the Dökkálfar, dark elves. The Ljósálfar are described as being fairer than the sun to look at. They are luminous, beautiful beings who dwell in the heavenly realm of Alfheimr. Alfheimr, meaning elf home or world of elves, is one of the 9 worlds. It was given to the Vanir god Freyja as a tooth gift, a gift given to an infant when they cut their first tooth. This association with Freyja, a god of fertility, peace, and prosperity, further links the light elves with concepts of light, beauty, growth, and benevolence. Alfheimr itself is depicted as a radiant and beautiful place, befitting its inhabitants. The Ljósálfar are generally considered to be benevolent or at least neutral towards humans and gods, often seen as positive forces connected to nature and perhaps minor guardian spirits. In contrast to the light elves, Snorri describes the Dökkálfar, or dark elves. He states that they dwell down in the earth and are blacker than pitch. Their appearance and nature are thus presented as being the opposite of the radiant Ljósálfar. The Dökkálfar are more mysterious and less clearly defined in the high mythological narratives. Their subterranean dwelling place and dark appearance have led to considerable scholarly debate and some confusion with the Dvergar, dwarves, who are also subterranean, master craftsmen. Indeed, the term Svartalfar, Black Elves, is also used, and Svartalfheimr, World of the Black Elves, is given as the realm of the Dvergar. This suggests a significant overlap, or perhaps that Dökkálfar and Dvergar/Svartalfar were considered very similar, if not identical types of beings in some contexts. Chthonic entities skilled in smithing and magic, distinct from the celestial Ljósálfar. Beyond Snorri's specific categorization, elves in a more general sense appear in various contexts in Norse literature and later Scandinavian folklore, often as beings connected to the landscape, mounds, or specific places. There is evidence of cultic practices associated with elves, such as the Alfa-blot self-sacrifice, which was a local private ritual conducted by families, typically led by the woman of the household. These sacrifices were made to the elves, likely to ensure health, prosperity, protection for the household, or the fertility of the land. This suggests that elves were seen as powerful local spirits, or wights, who could influence human lives and with whom one needed to maintain a good relationship. The Poetic Edda mentions elves in various poems. For example, in Volundartvida, the Lay of Volundark, Volundar is referred to as a prince of elves. In Grimnismal, Alfheimr is listed among the worlds. While the individual named Alfar with extensive personal sagas are not prominent in the way that named Jötnar or Dvergar are, the Alfar as a collective race holds a distinct place in the Norse cosmos. The they represent the brighter, more ethereal aspects of the supernatural, connected to beauty, light, and divine realms like Alfheimr under Freyja's benign lordship. The Dökkálfar or Svartalfar represent the darker, earthier, and more hidden aspects, dwelling beneath the ground, their nature often intertwined with the masterful but sometimes reclusive Dvergar. Together, they contribute to the rich tapestry of beings that inhabit the 9 worlds, embodying different facets of nature, magic, and the otherworldly forces that interact with gods and humans. Their lore, though sometimes less detailed than that of other races, points to their significance in both grand cosmology and everyday belief. We now turn to the formidable and iconic figures of the Valkyries, the Valkyries, whose name translates evocatively as choosers of the slain. These warrior maidens are primarily associated with the god Odin and play a vital role in the Norse conception of battle, death, and the afterlife for heroic warriors. The Valkyries are divine battle maidens who serve Odin. Their most renowned duty is to fly over battlefields, observing the conflict and selecting the bravest of the warriors who fall in combat. These chosen slains, known as the Einherjar, are then escorted by the Valkyries to Odin's magnificent hall in Asgard, Valhalla, Hall of the Slain. In Valhalla, the Einherjar live a glorious afterlife. Every day they feast on the meat of the boar Saharimnir, who magically regenerates daily, and drink mead. They also spend their days fighting and training, preparing for the cataclysmic final battle of Ragnarok, where they will fight alongside Odin and the other Aesir against the forces of chaos. Within Valhalla, the Valkyries have another crucial role. They serve mead and ale to the Einherjar, attending to these chosen heroes. They are often depicted as beautiful and noble figures, embodying an ideal of martial feminine power. Beyond choosing the slain and serving in Valhalla, Valkyries are also sometimes described as having influence over the outcome of battles, weaving the fate of warriors and protecting favored heroes. They are Odin's emissaries, carrying out his will on the battlefield. Valkyries are often depicted as riding swift horses through the air and over the sea, armed with spears and helmets, their armor sometimes gleaming with an eerie light that was said to be the origin of the Aurora Borealis, the Northern Lights. They are also sometimes associated with swans, capable of shape-shifting or possessing swan cloaks. While many Valkyries are listed by name in various poems, detailed individual stories are available for only a few, particularly those who become entangled in the affairs of mortal heroes, often in the heroic lays which blend mythological and legendary material. One of the most famous and extensively detailed Valkyries is Brunhild. Her story is central to the Volsung cycle and is also featured in the poetic Edda, Es Sigrifumal, Helrid, Brynhilda, and the Volsunga saga. Brynhilda was a Valkyrie whom Odin had punished for disobedience. In one version, she had favored a different king in battle than Odin had decreed. As punishment, Odin condemned her to marry a mortal and pricked her with a sleep form, causing her to fall into a magical slumber within a ring of fire atop a mountain. Hindar, the hero Sigr in German tradition, after slaying the dragon Fafnir and acquiring immense wisdom and treasure, rode his horse Grani through the flames and awakened Brynhilda. She then imparted great wisdom and runic knowledge to him. Sigurdrifa, the Lay of Sigurðr. Sigurdrifa being another name for Brynhilda, meaning victory bringer. They pledged their love and swore oaths to marry each other. However, due to the machinations of Grimhild, queen of the Niflungs, Zigungar, Sigurd was given a potion of forgetfulness, causing him to forget Brynhildr and marry Grimhild's daughter, Gudrun. Kriemhild, later Sigurdrun in disguise as Gudrun's brother Gunnar, who desired to marry Brynhilda but could not pass the flames, rode through the fire again and won Brynhilda for Gunnar. Brynhilda, unaware of the deception and believing Gunnar had accomplished the feat, reluctantly married him. When Brynhilda discovered the truth of the deception, that it was Sigurd who had ridden through the flames both times and that he had broken his oath to her, she was consumed by grief, rage, and a desire for vengeance. Her wounded pride and love led her to instigate Sigurd's murder by Gunnar's brother Guthormr. After Sigurd's death, Brynhilda, overcome with sorrow, took her own life, requesting to be burned on the same funeral pyre as Sigurd, so they could be united in death. Her tragic tale is one of passionate love, betrayal, broken oaths, and fierce pride, a powerful narrative of a Valkyrie caught between her divine nature and mortal entanglements. Another prominent Valkyrie with a detailed story is Sigrun, featured in the poems Helgak Vidar Hundingsbana I and Helgak Vidar Hundingsbana II. The first and second lays of Helgi Hundingsban. Sigrun was a Valkyrie, daughter of King Hogni. She fell in love with the hero Helgi Hundingsbane. Helgi was a great warrior and Sigrun often aided him in his battles, flying above the fray. She is described as a chooser of the slain, who also actively protected her beloved. Sigrun was betrothed against her will to Hodbroddr, son of King Granmar. She sought Helgi's help, and Helgi gathered a force and attacked Hodbroddr and his allies, including Sigrun's own father and brothers. In a great battle, Helgi slew Hodbroddr and many of Sigrun's kin. Despite the fact that Helgi had killed her father and brothers, though some sources say one brother, Dagja, survived and later avenged them, Sigrun married Helgi, her love for him overriding her familial grief. They had sons together. However, Dagrik, Sigrun's surviving brother, felt bound by honor to avenge his father and siblings. He sacrificed to Odin and was given a spear. With this spear, Dagrik ambushed and killed Helgi at a place called Fjarðarlundr. Sigrun was devastated by Helgi's death. She cursed Dagrun for his treachery. So profound was her grief that Helgi, even in death, manifested from his burial mound. One evening, Sigrun's maid saw Helgi and his retinue of slain warriors riding towards his own burial mound. Sigrun went to the mound and Helgi, his wounds still bleeding, invited her in. She spent one last night with him in the grave, embracing him, though his body was cold and covered in frost. Helgi told her that her tears of sorrow caused him pain in the afterlife. Before dawn, Helgi had to return to Valhalla. He told Sigrun not to weep for him. Sigrun, however, could not overcome her sorrow, and it is said that she died soon after from grief, hoping to be reunited with Helgi in the afterlife. Their story is a poignant romance of love, war, loyalty, and the sorrow of loss, highlighting a Valkyrie's deep emotional capacity. Many other Valkyries are named in the sources, often in lists or thula, meretrical name lists. Some of these names evoke their warlike nature or appearance. Gunnar, war, or battle. Hilda, battle. Gondel, Wandwilder, or Magic Wilder. Shakel, or Rager. Yes. Baladin, Efetur, Warfetter, referring to their ability to paralyze enemies. Forest, Shaker, Quaker. Mist, cloud or mist, perhaps referring to their ethereal appearance. Sketch, Axage, strength or power. Also the name of Thor's daughter, leading to some debate if she was also a Valkyrie. Rhoda, sleet or storm, who along with Gunra and Skuld is said to ride to choose the slain and govern the slaughter. Dolcha, debt or future. Also the name of one of the Norns, suggesting a deep connection between Valkyries and the workings of fate. The overlap of Skull's name with one of the Norns is particularly significant, emphasizing the Valkyries' role not just as choosers of the slain post-battle, but potentially as agents of fate who help determine who lives and who dies, weaving the web of war. In some poetic descriptions, such as in Daradalajod, found in Njál saga, Valkyries are depicted as weaving on a gruesome loom, with men's heads as weights, men's entrails as warp and weft, a sword as a beater, and arrows as shuttles, deciding the outcome of the battle and who will perish. This imagery powerfully connects them to the determination of fate in conflict. The origins of Valkyries are not always explicitly stated. Some seem to be of divine or semi-divine origin, while others, like Sigrun, are daughters of human kings, suggesting that mortal women could also become Valkyries, perhaps through exceptional bravery, skill, or Odin's favor. The Valkyr are thus complex figures, fierce warrior maidens, agents of Odin, selectors of heroes, servers of mead in Valhalla, protectors of favored warriors, weavers of fate, and sometimes passionate lovers caught in tragic human dramas. They embody the Norse fascination with fate, the glory of a heroic death, and the powerful, often dangerous allure of warrior women. We now embark on an exhaustive tour of the 9 worlds of Norse mythology, the distinct yet interconnected realms that constitute the entire cosmos, all supported and linked by the immense world tree, Yggdrasil. While the exact configuration and listing of 9 specific worlds can vary slightly between interpretations of the sources, we will explore all the major realms consistently mentioned. The great ash tree Yggdrasil stands at the center of the cosmos. Its roots delve deep into different worlds, and its branches spread out over all existence. One root is said to reach into Asgard, another into Jötunheimr, near Mimir's well, and a third into Niflheimr, near the well Vjögumir. Asgard, enclosure of the Aesir, is the celestial stronghold and primary home of the Aesir tribe of gods. It is a realm of divine order, power, and beauty, often depicted as being located high in the heavens, perhaps at the top of Yggdrasil. Asgard is fortified by a mighty wall, said to have been built by a giant craftsman with the aid of his magical horse, Svadilfari, a story involving Loki's cunning. The only entrance to Asgard for mortals, or those traversing from Midgard, is the shimmering rainbow bridge, Bifrost. Trembling way or shimmering path, guarded vigilantly by the god Heimdallr from his hall Himinbjörg. Within Asgard lie many magnificent halls and plains belonging to the gods. Idavollar, Splendor Plain, or Plain of Deeds, is a central plain in Asgard. It is described as the place where the gods met after creation and where they will gather again after Ragnarok. It was here they built their first halls and forges. Valhalla, Hall of the Slain, is Odin's most famous hall. It is immense, with 540 doors, each wide enough for Einherjar to march through abreast. Its rafters are spears, its roof is made of shields, and coats of mail are strewn over its benches. Here, the Valkyries bring chosen warriors slain in battle, the Einherjar, who feast, fight, and prepare for Ragnarok. A wolf hangs west of the doors, and an eagle hovers above it. Bingolf, Friend Hall or Wine Hall is another beautiful hall in Asgard, often described as the sanctuary or hall of the goddesses, Asinjur. It is sometimes considered comparable in splendor to Valhalla. Valaskjald's Shelf of the Slain is one of Odin's personal halls. It is roofed with pure silver. Within Valaskjald is Odin's high seat, Hlidskjalf, or Lidskjalf, from which he can gaze out and see into all the 9 worlds, observing all events. Bilskirnir, Lightning Gleamer, or Everlasting Bright, is Thor's vast and mighty hall. It is said to be the largest of all buildings, with 540 rooms, reflecting Thor's immense strength and status. It is located in the region of Thrudvangur, Plain of Strength. Ydalir is the home of Ulla, the god of archery, skiing and hunting. The name suggests a connection to yew wood, often used for making bows. Sorkvabekre, Sunken Bench, or Treasure Bank, is the hall of the goddess Saga. Odin is said to visit her there daily, where they drink mead from golden cups, and she sings to him of ancient tales. The name might imply a place of deep wisdom or hidden treasures. Glitnir, Shining Hall, or Glittering One, is the hall of Forseti, the god of justice and reconciliation. Its pillars are of red gold and its roof is of silver. It is where Forseti presides over disputes and settles strife. Heldenbjorg, Heaven's Mountain, or Sky Cliffs, is the hall of Heimdallr, the ever-vigilant guardian of the Bifrost Bridge. It is situated where the Rainbow Bridge meets the edge of Asgard. From here, Heimdallr can see and hear everything happening in the worlds. Breidablik, Gleam wide, wide shining, is the beautiful and pure hall of Balder, the god of light and beauty, and his wife Nanna. It is a place where nothing impure or evil can enter. Notun's ship enclosure or haven is the seaside hall of Njörðr, the Vanir god of the sea, wind and prosperity. It is located by the coast, reflecting his domain. Land Vidi, wide land, is the hall of Vidar, Odin's silent son, who is destined to avenge his father at Ragnarok. It is described as a place of growing grass and high brushwood, suggesting wildness or resilience. Folkvang, Field of the Host, or People Field, is the realm or field ruled by the goddess Freyja. Within Folkvang is her magnificent hall, Sessrumni, or Hall with Many Seats. Freyja chooses half of the warriors slain in battle to dwell with her here, while Odin takes the other half to Valhalla. Midgard, Middle Enclosure or Middle Earth, is the world of humanity. It was created by Odin, Vili and Vi from the body of the primordial giant Ymir. They raised Ymir's eyebrows, or eyelashes, to form a defensive fortification around Midgard, protecting it from the Jötnar of Jötunheimr. Midgard is situated between Asgard above and Niflheimr/Hell below, and it is encircled by the vast ocean. In this ocean lurks the enormous world serpent, Jormungandr, who is so large that he bites his own tail, encompassing all of Midgard, Jötunheimr. Jötunheimr, world of giants, is the vast and rugged realm of the Jötnar. It is typically located to the east, Utgard, or north of Midgard, across the river Ifengar. It is a land of towering mountains, dark forests, frozen wastes, and great rivers. Specific locations within Jötunheimr include Utgardero, Outer Enclosure or Outyards, the formidable fortress of the giant king Utgarda Loki, master of illusions, Thrymheimr, Noisehome, or Thunderworld, the mountain stronghold of the giant Thiazi, and later his daughter Skadi, Jimisgarda. Gymir's Courts, the home of the giant Gymir and his beautiful daughter Hitbjorg. Clashing Rocks, the mountain where Sutton hid the Mead of Poetry, guarded by his daughter Gun. Jarnvidda, Unwood, a desolate forest east of Midgard, inhabited by giantesses, Jarnvidda, who raise wolves, including the wolves Skoll and Hoti, who pursue the sun and moon, and Managama, who will feast on the flesh of the dead. Angrambodr, mother of Fenrir, Jormungandr, and Hel dwelt here. Astrupnir, the protective wall around the home of the giant Menglod, guarded by the watchman Fjolnir and fierce dogs. Vanaheimr, world of the Vanir, is the homeland of the Vanir tribe of gods, who are associated with fertility, wisdom, prosperity, and magic, seiðr. The location of Vanaheimr is less clearly defined than other worlds, but it is distinct from Asgard. After the Aesir-Vanir War, key Vanir deities like Njörðr, Freyr, and Freyja came to live in Asgard as part of the peace treaty. Details about Vanaheimr itself are scarce in the surviving myths, but it is presumed to be a fertile and prosperous realm. Alfheimr, Elfheimr, or world of elves, is the beautiful and radiant realm of the Ljósálfar, light elves. As mentioned, it was given to the god Freyja. It is considered one of the heavenly realms, associated with light, beauty, and growth. Svartalfheim, Night of Elia. Svartalfheim, world of the Black Elves, also known as Nidavellir, dark fields, or downward fields, is the subterranean realm of the Dwarves, or Svartalfar, Black Elves. It is a world of caves, mines, and forges, located deep beneath the earth. Here, the dwarves mine precious metals and gems and craft their wondrous artifacts. It is often depicted as dark and labyrinthine. Muspelheimr, world of Muspel, possibly Destroyer or World Destroyer, is the primordial realm of fire and heat, located to the south in the Norse cosmos. It is a land of eternal flame, molten rock, and unbearable heat. Muspelheimr is ruled by the fire giant, Surt, who wields a flaming sword that shines brighter than the sun. The sons of Muspel, or fire giants, originate from this realm. At Ragnarok, Surt and his fiery host will ride forth from Muspelheimr, break the Bifrost Bridge, and Surt will ultimately set the world ablaze, consuming it in fire. Niflheimr, world of mist or dark world, is one of the oldest realms, a primordial world of ice, snow, cold, and perpetual darkness located to the north. It existed even before the creation of the world from Yr's body. Within Niflheimr is the great spring Hvergelmir, roaring kettle or bubbling cauldron spring, from which 11 or more poisonous rivers, known collectively as the Elífagar, icy waves, flow. These rivers froze, and their venomous yeast hardened into ice, which, when met by the heat from Muspelheimr in Ginnungagap, began to melt, leading to the creation of Ymir. Niflheimr is sometimes conflated or closely associated with Hel, the realm of the dead, a particularly grim location within or connected to Niflheimr, or sometimes Colded Corpse Shore, or Shore of Corpses. This is described as a desolate and terrifying place. It is a hall located far from the sun, with its doors facing north. The hall is woven from the spines of serpents, and the heads of these serpents all face inward, dripping venom into the hall, forming rivers of venom. In these venomous rivers wade oathbreakers, murderers, and those who seduced other men's wives, heinous criminals by Norse societal standards. The dragon, Nidhogg, Malice Striker, is also said to torment the dead here, feasting on their corpses. Nastrond represents a place of punishment and suffering for the wicked dead, a darker aspect of the afterlife distinct from the more neutral realm of Hel, or the honor of Valhalla. Helheimr, Hel, also known as Helheimr, Hel's realm, or hidden realm, is the primary abode of the dead, specifically for those who do not die heroically in battle, and are thus not chosen for Valhalla or Folkvanger, but die of sickness, old age, or other non-martial causes. It is ruled by the goddess Hel, daughter of Loki and Angrboda. Hel is often depicted as a grim and shadowy underworld, located downwards and northwards. The entrance to Hel is guarded. The river Gjöll, resounding or noisy, flows near the gates of Hel and must be crossed. The bridge over this river is Gjallabru, resounding bridge, which is described as being thatched with gleaming gold. It is guarded by the Jotun, maiden Modgud. The hound Gerðr is said to guard the gates of hell at the cave Niflheimr. Gerðr is a monstrous dog, often described as blood-stained, who will break free at Ragnarok and fight against the god Tyr. With both slaying each other, within hell lies the hall of the goddess Hel, named Eljudnir, misery, sleet, cold, or damp with sleet. Her plate is named Hun, hunger, her knife Sultras, famine, her manservant Gunglati, Tardi, her maidservant Gunglati, lazy, her threshold Folander. 4. Falling block or falling peril. Her bed, Kor, sickness, Lejin or cares, and her bed hangings. Blikkjendabol, gleaming misfortune or looming disaster. These names all emphasize the bleak, joyless, and deficient nature of existence in her realm for many of its inhabitants. While hell is generally a place of gloom rather than active torment for most, unlike Nastrond, which is specifically for the wicked, it is not a desirable afterlife compared to Valhalla. It is a cold, dark, and shadowy existence. However, it is also the place from which Balder and Hodrach are prophesied to return after Ragnarok, suggesting it holds all souls, not just the dishonorable. These 9 worlds, each with its distinct character, inhabitants, and landscapes, form a complex and interconnected cosmos, held together by the mighty Grasiel, and all subject to the dramatic events of creation, conflict, and ultimate destruction and rebirth at Ragnarok. Their exploration reveals the richness and depth of the Norse mythological vision, and that is it. If you've enjoyed this video, please consider subscribing to the Purple Files, click the like button, and drop a comment down below. More videos to come, and until then, thanks for watching.